Chapter 2762. Here's what happened. Ling Fifan was a man with an arrogant personality. Unlike Ling Jianshui, who was mellow and calm, he was more like Ling Han. Therefore, he showed off his abilities and was easy to get into trouble. As a result, he got into a conflict with a First Firmament Immortal King over a trivial matter. The two of them fought and the First Firmament Immortal King lost. In the end, the First Firmament Immortal King's subordinate was provoked into attacking him. How could a fight between First Firmament Immortal Kings attract Ninth Firmament experts? Ling Han had to take the blame for this. Because the Ninth Firmament Immortal King was called Invincible Yu. The Yu family and Ling Han were old enemies. Therefore, when Yu Wudi heard that this man's surname was Ling, he ran out and beat Ling Fifan up. Logically speaking, it was strictly forbidden for high-level celestial kings to attack low-level celestial kings, unless the disparity was within two realms. Yu Wudi dared to do this because his father, Celestial King Yu Su, had not only become a celestial master, but had also advanced to the second step. Back then, the Imperial Void Immortal King had almost become a heavenly venerate in the celestial territory. All he needed was more time or a bit of opportunity. After coming to the fiery frost plain, the cultivation environment here was good enough. Coupled with the fact that he had an epic, he naturally took a step forward. He was extraordinary. After so many years, he had successfully taken the second step. Of course, Yu Wudi could be arrogant now that he had become a celestial lord. He didn't have a perfect celestial seed, and that was just a scam. His chances of becoming a celestial lord were extremely slim, so he decided to be the king here. Just because Ling Fifan's surname was Ling, he had severely injured Ling Fifan. There was no other reason than he was unhappy with the surname, although he had beaten up the right person. After Ling Jianshui found out, he went to argue with Yu Wudi, but they ended up fighting again. He was not weaker than Yu Wudi, but Yu Wudi had been operating here for many years and had many friends in the Nine Heavens. When these people attacked together, Ling Jianshui was no match for them and was also seriously injured. It was that simple. Ling Han's expression was gloomy. Did they all think he was dead? How dare they bully his son and grandson? And this was because Yu Wudi didn't know the identity of Ling Jianshui and his son. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dealt a heavy blow, but a fatal blow. He hasn't killed anyone in an epic. Has everyone forgotten about his existence? Fine, then he'll kill someone. Ling Han said to Chen Shuangshuang, "Take care of the two of them, I'm going to kill them." Chen Shuangshuang couldn't help but be excited. She never knew that she would have the urge to cry when she heard the word murder. This was the martial courtyard, and the rules were strict. They were set by the Empyrean. However, Ling Han did not hesitate to kill. This was the anger and love of a father. The martial arts courtyard was huge, but to Ling Han, it was very small. He took one step after another, and in less than the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, he had already arrived at the foot of the mountain where Yu Wudi's abode was located. If after Ling Fifan was beaten, the Martial Arts Institute came forward in time and severely punished Yu Wudi, as long as it was reported to the public, Ling Han did not have to break the rules. But until now, the Martial Arts Institute had not taken any action, which made Ling Han extremely angry. Since the Martial Institute didn't care, then don't blame him, the father, for personally taking action. He climbed the mountain step by step and soon reached the top. "Who are you?" Someone was guarding the abode, and he immediately shouted at Ling Han. This was a third heaven celestial king, so naturally, Ling Han did not take him seriously. However, Ling Han did not have the habit of killing the innocent, so he said, "Call Yu Wudi out, I want to settle the score with him." "How dare you?" The third heaven celestial king immediately rebuked. Ling Han shook his head and struck out with his palm, pressing forward. His palm was light as a feather, as if he did not use any force, so the third heaven celestial king was not afraid and similarly punched out at Ling Han. With just a touch, he was sent flying, and all the bones in his body were shattered. However, Ling Han was merciful and did not kill him. This force did not stop there, and struck the mountain again. Boom! With a loud sound, Yu Wudi's abode was instantly flattened. Shio! A figure flew out and stood in the sky. It was Yu Wudi. His black hair fluttered, and his face was filled with fury. Someone actually dared to attack his abode? That was too audacious. For you, he shouted at Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head. You don't recognize me? Yu Wuti stared at Ling Han. He only felt that Ling Han looked slightly familiar, but he could not remember who he was. After all, Ling Han had been cultivating hard in this epoch, causing his expression and temperament to change greatly. Moreover, Yu Wuti had long since thought that Ling Han was dead, so how could he possibly think of Ling Han? However, he still had a deep grudge against Ling Han. After a few more glances, he couldn't help but suck in a breath, and said through gritted teeth, Ling Han, I recognize you, Ling Han said calmly. You're actually not dead. Yu Wuti said hatefully. Back then he had been defeated by Ling Han, and had no choice but to break through to Celestial King tier in advance. After coming to the greatest martial arts institution in the world, Ling Han had created even more myths and legends that he could only look up to. He had thought that he had already died on the way to Celestial Venerable after not coming out for an epoch, but he had unexpectedly reappeared. Ling Han nodded. Today you injured two people. One is my son, and the other is my grandson. So I have come to settle this debt. Yu Wuti was stunned at first and then smirked coldly. If I had known, I would have struck harder. He was very pleased. He had not gained the upper hand against Ling Han, but had dealt with the descendant of his enemy. Very satisfying. He looked at Ling Han, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. Now that I've hit you, what can you do? Kill you? Ling Han said in a very calm tone. Huh? This is the martial arts institution, and you dare to attack? Yu Wuti was not afraid at all. Ling Han did not speak anymore. His feet moved and he walked towards Yu Wuti. You dare? Yu Wuti attacked. Boom, he grabbed a great dao and whipped it towards Ling Han. Bang, the great dao hit Ling Han's body, but there was not even a splash. Ling Han reached out and grabbed Yu Wuti's neck, as if he was picking up a chicken, and lifted him up. It was very simple. Yu Wuti's limbs moved wildly, and he struggled with all his might. His face was full of horror. How could he be so vulnerable in front of Ling Han? When they were on the immortal path, he could at least fight evenly, but he was at a slight disadvantage. But now, the two of them were not on the same level at all. You dare not kill me. Yu Wuti's face was already red, but he was still stubborn, because he knew that this was the martial arts institution, and Ling Han did not dare to kill him, so naturally he was not afraid. Take me to the people who attacked with me. Ling Han said coldly. Yu Wuti was the main culprit, and he must die, but the other people who injured his son would not have it easy, and they must be punished severely. In your dreams. Yu Wuti stared at Ling Han. Ling Han just tightened his grip, and a terrible power rushed through. Crack, 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 Yu Wuti's bones suddenly let out a groan. I'll take you there. Yu Wuti compromised. Chapter 2763. Yu Wuti agreed to take Ling Han to his little friend, not only because he couldn't stand the torture, but also because he wanted Ling Han to go out and let others see his appearance. Naturally, the martial arts institution would send people to save him. He believed that Ling Han must have become a quasi-celestial venerable, or even stronger, to be able to take him down in one blow. Fuck, a celestial venerable bullying someone, the martial arts institution would definitely do something about it. Soon, they arrived at the foot of a mountain. This was where one of Yu Wuti's little friends lived. His name was Cheng Feiwen, also a 9th-level celestial king, but there was no celestial venerable among his ancestors. This small group was led by Yu Wuti, because only his father was a celestial venerable, and a second-step one at that. Ling Han took out a piece of immortal gold, refined it into a chain, and tied Yu Wuti up, then dragged him up the mountain. There was more than one cave abode on this mountain, so the scene of Ling Han dragging Yu Wuti up the mountain was seen by many people. They were all shocked. That was Yu Wuti, a 9th-level celestial king with a second-step celestial venerable father. How could he be dragged like a dead dog? And who was the fierce person dragging Yu Wuti? Those who had been in the martial arts institution with Ling Han had already gone to the extraterritorial battlefield. Few of them were still here, so no one recognized Ling Han. When did such a monster appear in the martial arts institution? Yu Wudi felt humiliated. He was dragged around the martial arts institution in circles. How could he show off in the future? If someone mentioned what happened today, he would probably run away with his tail between his legs. He gritted his teeth and swore that he would definitely ask his father to kill Ling Han. Ah! He screamed. His body rubbed against the ground, causing his skin to break and blood to flow everywhere. This was because Ling Han had imbued his body with terrifying power. In addition, the ground here had been tempered by a heavenly venerate, making it incomparably hard. It was like grinding soybeans with a millstone. Even if he was a 9th-level immortal king, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. Moreover, his cultivation base had been sealed, so he couldn't use the laws to protect himself. Ling Han had no sympathy. When Yu Wudi attacked his son and grandson, he had already sentenced Yu Wudi to death. He didn't care about other people's gazes at all as he walked up the mountain. Everyone was curious and followed along. At the same time, there were naturally people who reported the situation to the Martial Arts Institute. The commotion was quite big. Before Ling Han could drag the man to the top of the mountain, the people above had already received the news and came out. Brother Yu. Seeing Yu Wudi being dragged on the ground, Cheng Feiwen was shocked. What was going on? You're Cheng Feiwen? Ling Han asked. How dare you? You actually dare to humiliate the disciples of the martial institution. Cheng Feiwen shouted. In the martial courtyard, as long as the gap between the realms didn't exceed the second celestial layer, one could make a move at will. As long as one didn't kill or cause irrecoverable injuries, it was fine. However, being able to hurt people didn't mean being able to humiliate them. Dragging Yu Wudi as if he were a dead dog like Ling Han had really exceeded the limit. Ling Han nodded and reached out to grab Cheng Feiwen. Cheng Feiwen hurriedly retreated. Even Yu Wudi had been taken down by Ling Han, which meant that his battle prowess was only equal to Yu Wudi's. It was impossible for him to be a match for Ling Han. However, Ling Han's battle prowess was comparable to that of a second-step celestial venerable. How could a mere 9th-level immortal king dodge? With one palm, Cheng Feiwen was taken down by Ling Han. What do you want to do? Cheng Feiwen was angry and shocked. Ling Han didn't answer. He also tied Cheng Feiwen to the chain and dragged him down the mountain. Ah! Cheng Feiwen roared. This was a great humiliation. Ling Han pretended not to hear him. He wanted to find a third person. Everyone was watching. This guy had seriously violated the rules of the martial institution. There would definitely be powerhouses coming out to suppress him. How would it end then? Clang, clang, clang. The chain rubbed against the ground, making an ear-piercing sound. Yu Wudi and Cheng Feiwen were both screaming. Their cultivation was sealed. Their skin was torn in the rubbing, and blood flowed out, leaving a trail of blood on the ground. If they weren't immortal kings, just this kind of bleeding would be enough to kill them. Even so, they were badly mutilated. It was a horrible sight to see. Many people didn't know the truth. They were all whispering about Ling Han's cruelty. He actually treated the disciples of the martial institution like this. Have you had enough? When Ling Han had just walked down the mountain, he heard a voice in his ear. Ling Han looked up and looked at the distant mountain peak. He shook his head. Not enough. Only he could hear this voice, so everyone was confused when they saw Ling Han talking to himself. Who was he talking to? What did he mean? Not enough? AI. A low sigh rang out in everyone's ears. A gray-robed man appeared. He said, "Seeing that your loved ones are injured, I will allow you to punish them. However, you have gone too far." Lady Hong Yun. Everyone knelt down. This was a second-step celestial venerable. He was the strongest person in the martial institution. Yu Wudi and Cheng Feiwen came back to their senses and shouted, "Lady Hong Yun, please make a decision." Publicly attacking other disciples in the martial institution was definitely a violation of the rules. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, could Celestial Venerable Hong Yun cover it up as if nothing had happened? Impossible. These two people wanted to provoke Celestial Venerable Hong Yun to punish Ling Han. Ling Han was expressionless. When they humiliated and injured my son, they did not go too far. One-on-one is a friendly fight. So what if they beat me up? Since they don't follow the rules, why should I follow the rules? Then don't blame me. Celestial Venerable Hongyun sighed and stretched out his hand to grab Ling Han. If Ling Han was only dealing with Yu Wudi in private, he might turn a blind eye. But now he could not. If he did not make a move, what would happen to the dignity of the martial institution? Ling Han humphed and threw out a punch to meet it. Bang! When the two forces collided, it immediately stirred up a super-huge storm. Those with sharp eyes could see that Empyrean Red Cloud had actually been sent flying. Oh my god, a second step Celestial Venerable was not a match for Ling Han. When the storm dissipated, everyone could clearly see that Ling Han was still standing proudly in the same place. His back was straight and his expression was firm. His eyes were cold and filled with strong killing intent. No matter who came today, he would make those who hurt his son and grandson pay the price they deserved. This Celestial Venerable Hongyun gasped. What kind of person was he? He immediately realized that Ling Han's attack just now was purely the power of his body. He did not call upon the power of heaven and earth. But even so, he still suppressed him. Although he had not cultivated the second step to perfection, he was still a second step Celestial Venerable. How could he be defeated? What kind of monster was this? Yu Wudi and Qing Feiwen were in despair. Even a second step Celestial Venerable was not a match for Ling Han? If that was the case, then even if Celestial Venerable Yushu came back, could he suppress Ling Han? Celestial Venerables had unimaginable privileges. As long as they did not turn to madness, what was the big deal about humiliating a ninth heaven celestial king? Could they still get back today's humiliation? Chapter 2764. Everyone shook their heads. Yu Wudi relied on the fact that his father was a celestial master of the second step, so he gathered helpers to bully Ling Jianshui. Who would have thought that Ling Jianshui also had a celestial master of the second step for a father? Now, his father came to take revenge. Could he blame Ling Han for this? Whose son would be bullied right under their noses without a temper? You are not in the second step. Celestial Venerable Red Cloud said with certainty. He was very clear that the second step was not like this. Not 2 steps. How many steps? Everyone was curious. Ling Han had just exchanged a blow with Heavenly Venerable Red Cloud, and he hadn't been at a disadvantage in terms of strength. He should at least be a second step Heavenly Venerable, right? Ling Han smiled. No. Celestial Venerable Red Cloud was filled with doubts. The other party clearly hadn't extracted the essence power of the origin world. Just by relying on his own power, he could match her or even surpass her. In that case, the other party's cultivation must be at least at the 3rd level. But the question was, why didn't he use his full strength? You've already caused a ruckus in the academy to avenge your son. What else do you have to worry about? Could it be that his gaze flickered as a possibility surfaced in his mind, causing his entire body to tremble? Quasi-Empyrean? He said. Everyone was in an uproar when they heard this. How could a pseudo-Empyrean be possible? What kind of joke was this? Is there anyone who can fight a second step quasi-Empyrean? The problem was that this joke had come from the mouth of Empyrean Red Cloud, a true second step Empyrean. Others would be wrong, others would not be as perceptive as him, others would purposely say frightening things. Ling Han didn't want to hide it. He nodded. That's right. You're Ling Han, the same Ling Han from an epoch ago, said Empyrean Red Cloud. He recalled that an epoch ago he had still been a first-step Empyrean. He had heard that a fierce person had appeared in the first level of the battlefield and had easily entered the overall rankings. At that time, he had thought that when Ling Han stepped into the Empyrean realm and entered the second level, he would take good care of this rising star. In the end, Ling Han disappeared. However, Wu Haoyang, who was equally as famous as Ling Han, had suddenly emerged. He was now a 4th-step Empyrean, standing side by side with Exin Chihu and Lin Yolian. They were known as the 3 Kings, and he was a character that he could only look up to. He had thought that Ling Han could only serve as a foil to Wu Haoyang, but he had never expected that he would appear again after so many years. If a quasi-celestial venerable could fight against a second-step celestial venerable, then when he reached the 4th step, hiss. Empyrean Red Cloud didn't dare to think about it. How powerful would this lord become in the future? Ling Han, after all, this is the martial arts institution. How about you take a step back? He advised. On one hand, he was concerned about Ling Han's future, and on the other hand, Ling Han had used his strength to prove that he had the ability to match second-step martial artists and was on equal footing with him. Naturally, he put down his arrogance. Yu Wudi and Qing Feiwen, on the other hand, were extremely gloomy. They were the victims, and you actually said nice things to the culprit in front of them? Ling Han shook his head. Impossible. I must make the culprit pay the price today. You're the one who did it. Yu Wudi and Qing Feiwen shouted in their hearts, but they could only groan. It hurt. Ling Han dragged the two of them forward, while Empyrean Red Cloud's expression was ugly. He should have stopped Ling Han, but he had just come to oversee the academy, and he was the only heavenly venerable in the entire academy. However, he knew his own limitations, and was no match for Ling Han, so how could he have stopped him? If he went up and pestered him, he would only be asking for humiliation. He didn't want the news of a second-step Empyrean losing to a quasi-Empyrean. In his eyes, his wisdom was far more important than the lives of Yu Wudi and Qing Feiwen. If they died, then so be it. He had already tried to stop them, but he couldn't. Brother Ling, you're on your own, Empyrean Red Cloud said solemnly. He then turned around and left. He would report this matter to his superiors, and as for how to deal with Ling Han in the future, that would be up to those big shots. Gone. Gone. Everyone's mouths were wide open, and they were speechless. Aren't you overseeing the martial arts institution? Now that someone is committing murder in public, you actually don't care? It's not that Lord Red Cloud doesn't want to care, but that this person is too strong. Even Lord Red Cloud can't suppress him. Someone said the truth. Ling Han, Ling Han. Lord Red Cloud said that this is a character from an era. I remember now. There was indeed a fierce person from an era ago. Did you guys go to the immemorial stone? That name was left behind by Ling Han. Also, it said that when he was in the foreign battlefield, he only used a few 100,000 years to fight his way into the top 100. He's definitely a monster. You guys know about Wu Haoyang, right? Back then, Ling Han suppressed Heavenly King Wu and was named the strongest of his generation. Everyone gritted their teeth. It was too abstract to say anything else, but Wu Haoyang's fame was too great. He only used 2 billion years to become a fourth-step Empyrean. However, the step from fourth to fifth was too difficult, so he had remained at the fourth step. He was the strongest prodigy throughout the ages. Together with Exen Chihu and Lin Yolian, they were known as the three heavenly kings. In the future, they could all reach the seventh step and were the hope of the origin world. And Ling Han was a bit stronger than Hao Haoyang back then, so it was easy to understand why he was so monstrous. Ling Han's expression didn't change at all. He walked around the martial courtyard and found one person after another who had bullied his son. Some people had not received the news yet and were caught red-handed by him in the abode, while others had escaped after receiving the news, but it was impossible for them to escape from Ling Han's hands. They were captured by him and brought back to the academy. There were already 12 people chained up, and these were all the murderers who had surrounded Ling Jianshui. Other than Yu Wudi, Ling Han hung up the other 11 people and then stepped on Yu Wudi, crushing his face. In the immortal region, this person could be called his opponent, but now he didn't even have the qualifications to fight. Ling Han, what's so great about bullying people just because your cultivation is higher than mine? When my father comes back, he will definitely cut off your head. Yu Wudi shouted, his eyes spitting fire. Ling Han nodded. I also have some debts to settle with Yu Su. If he comes back, I will kill him. Yu Wudi couldn't help but weaken. Even Heavenly Venerable Hong Yun couldn't beat him, and Heavenly Venerable Yu Su had just reached the second step not long ago. It was even more impossible for him to be Ling Han's opponent. I ask you, do you regret it? Ling Han asked. Yu Wudi didn't dare to hold on anymore. He definitely temporarily lowered his head and nodded. I do. Do you know you were wrong? Ling Han asked again. I was wrong. Yu Wudi was very honest. Ling Han nodded and pointed with a finger. Pa, one of Yu Wudi's arms suddenly exploded, turning into a rain of blood. Yu Wudi screamed and almost fainted. He thought that if he lowered his head, Ling Han would let him go, but he was obviously wrong. Ling Han didn't have any sympathy. He pointed with another finger. Pa, Yu Wudi's other arm also exploded. He didn't stop at all. He pointed with another finger, and Yu Wudi's legs exploded one by one as well. There were people all around, but they didn't dare to make a sound. This guy was too ruthless. Just because Yu Wudi hit his son, he actually publicly executed him in the martial arts academy. Was he going to kill him by 1,000 cuts? In the future, he absolutely couldn't become enemies with Ling Jianxue. No, if he met anyone with the surname Ling, he had to hide far away. Chapter 2766. Ling Han and the Empress sat down some distance away from each other. There was a huge gap between the two of them, so it was naturally impossible for them to sit together. The closer they got to the core, the easier it was for them to sense the unique power within. The two of them went into seclusion. It is very difficult to make further progress. Both of them were close to their limits, and it was impossible for them to absorb any more dimensional power. Even if they could, it would take a long time. They activated their constitutions and accelerated the flow of time. After a full 70 million years, Ling Han finally comprehended the unique power of the fiery frost dimension and began to absorb it into his body. After another 50 million years, he succeeded. The Empress's talent was not as good as his, but the amount of plain power she could contain was also far less than his. Thus, she also successfully fused with the last bit of power. The two of them could become Empyreans. Return to the martial courtyard. They could attack the Empyrean realm here, but Ling Han was defying the heavens. If he were to suffer a backlash from the world at the most critical time, that would be a big joke. Therefore, it was better to leave this place first. They returned to the martial courtyard. After such a long time, Ling Fifan had reached the 9th heavenly layer, and Ling Jianxue had broken through to the quasi-celestial master stage. Both father and son had gone to the extraterritorial battlefield to fight against the frenzied army. Of course, Qin Shuangshuang and In Xiu were also traveling with them. Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head. He had been a quasi-Empyrean for a really long time. Now, even his son's cultivation base had caught up to his, and he might even have broken through to the Empyrean realm. He and the Empress began to break through to the heavenly venerable tier. This was no secret in the martial academy. Everyone was curious as to how powerful Ling Han would become after he took this step. Even a second step celestial venerable would not be a match for him. What about a third step celestial venerable? Some were looking forward to it, some were jealous, and some were secretly hateful. For example, Zhukai. After so many years, he had only entered the 4th heaven, but with his talent, this was already a miracle. It couldn't be helped. His father had already become a second-step heavenly venerate and could give him even more precious cultivation resources. No one doubted that Ling Han might fail. He already had the combat strength of a second-step heavenly venerable. How could he be stuck at the heavenly venerable realm? What they weren't sure about was when Ling Han would come out of seclusion. Ling Han meditated. He was a quasi-Empyrean, and he was different from the rest. Others used the power of an entire plane to temper their bodies, but when they reached a certain height and their physique was strong enough, they could directly extract this power for their own use, multiplying their battle prowess. When the conditions were right, success would follow. There were almost no difficulties. Therefore, as long as one could become a quasi-Empyrean, they could definitely become a true Empyrean. Ling Han was completely different. He had formed a power core within his body, and all of his power came from the core within his body. He did not need to borrow the power of heaven and earth. Otherwise, he would only be able to borrow the unique power of that plane. If there was only one power, then what was the point of working hard for an entire era? He wanted to let the core power in his body circulate throughout his body and refine it to the extreme. Only then would he be able to withstand the eruption of the core power. Then he would be able to face his enemies with confidence. With a single thought, the core would erupt with all its power, and he would no longer need to rely on his physical strength. He slowly released his inner core, allowing the power to circulate in his body over and over again. He had already gone through this process many times, and it was very familiar and easy. Then he slowly released his inner core, causing more and more power to gush out. Surging power surged in his body, roaring endlessly. The entire academy could hear such a commotion, causing everyone to be stunned. They had never seen such a huge commotion when a quasi-Empyrean broke through. Time continued to pass, and the power circulating in Ling Han's body became stronger and stronger, more and more terrifying. The aura fluctuations that surged out even caused the space to tremble, and also caused everyone to feel danger. If this kind of aura went out of control, then it was possible that the entire academy would be destroyed in a day. 70,000 years passed, and the Empress was the first to break through, advancing into the heavenly venerable tier. Though heavenly tribulation descended, it did not affect her in the slightest. But Ling Han was still continuing to temper his body. He had fused too much power of the plane, and now he still had not reached his limit. He was not anxious. This was something that had long been within his expectations. 100,000 years, 200,000 years, close to 300,000 years later, Ling Han finally discovered that he was about to reach his limit. However, it was at this moment that a violent power suddenly exploded in his body. Poof! Ling Han suddenly spat blood. This was shockingly the power of the plane that he had recently drawn, the power unique to the fire-frost plane. This power had been very peaceful all along, but at such a crucial moment, it suddenly rebelled. In the first place, Ling Han was already about to reach his limit, and the sudden explosion of this power could easily be imagined what kind of effect it would have on him. This was great destruction. He hurriedly suppressed it, but the explosion of this power caused the power of the other planes to become chaotic. Under the chain reaction, his core surged with power as if it had gone out of control, and battered his body. Pa. His bones were instantly shattered. So what if it was as strong as divine metal? The unique power of the plane was originally at the level of a heavenly venerable, and now there was an unknown number of such power surging out, and divine metal would also instantly shatter. Ling Han was unable to suppress this explosive power. Hong. His core surged out more and more terrifyingly, and spat out power at an astonishing speed, forcibly tearing his body apart. When it reached a limit, the core actually exploded. Ling Han instantly turned into innumerable pieces. Whether it was his physical body or his soul, they were both severely injured. He forcibly used his weakened soul to gather every piece of the pieces, and pieced them together again. He sat down cross-legged, and circulated the indestructible heaven scroll over and over again, wanting to recover. But this was too difficult. His body turned into innumerable pieces, and each piece contained the unique power of a certain plane. These powers had originally been fused together by Ling Han, but now they were completely separated and were incompatible, unable to be fused together. He had failed. Ling Han was unwilling and could not accept it. He had worked so hard for so long and raised his battle prowess to an unprecedented level, but now he was actually unable to break through to the heavenly venerable tier. Husband! Lu Yutong and the others all rushed over. With the final great explosion, the secret chamber that Ling Han was cultivating in was completely destroyed. This naturally also alarmed the women. They looked at Ling Han and all of them were stunned. That was because although Ling Han had pieced his body back together, there were still bloody marks on every part of his body, especially on his chest. There was shockingly a hole there, from which blood was currently gushing out. This was clearly not right. Ling Han showed a bitter smile. I failed to break through to the heavenly venerable tier. There seems to be some problem. Take your time, you will definitely be able to recover, the Empress consoled. After becoming a heavenly venerable tier, she had become even more graceful and elegant. Ling Han nodded and continued to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll. Seeing that Ling Han could still circulate his cultivation technique, the women all breathed a slight sigh of relief, but there was worry on all of their faces. Just how serious was Ling Han's condition? Now they could only wait patiently. Chapter 2767. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll again and again, but could only repair his body simply. From the outside, The wounds on his body had already disappeared, but the bloody hole in his chest was still there. His heart had already disappeared, and blood kept gushing out. He was completely unable to control his own body. Every muscle and every bone had become an independent entity, containing the unique power of a dimension, and could not be unified at all. In this way, he was not even a celestial king, much less a second-step heavenly venerable. Ling Han tried to exert force, and instantly gave a muffled grunt. The powers in his body clashed with each other, and could not be released at all. It would only cause conflict within his body, and instantly, his right hand exploded into pieces. He pieced his right hand back together, frowning deeply. Now there was a big problem. He did not think that this was because he had previously disobeyed the heaven and earth, and thus was deliberately targeted by the fiery frost dimension. This was completely because he had been too greedy and absorbed too much power of the dimension, far exceeding the limit that his physique could accommodate. Thus, once he channeled it fully, he exploded. Now that his core was shattered, all his previous efforts were wasted, and he was completely crippled. Was there no way to fix this? Ling Han continuously tried, wanting to reconstruct his core and fuse these powers into it again, but he discovered that this was completely a delusion. The powers in his body were too chaotic, and the moment he moved, they would clash with each other, instantly causing him to split into pieces. He tried all kinds of methods, but they were all useless. The Empress even invited Wall over, but Wall was also helpless. He was good at analyzing information, but he had never encountered such a situation before, and could only watch helplessly. Previously, the commotion caused by Ling Han's great explosion was too great and could not be concealed at all, because the powerful aura that filled the entire martial arts academy had already disappeared, so Ling Han must have stopped breaking through. Why had they not seen Ling Han appear yet? Someone discovered that Wall had gone to Ling Han's cave abode, and specially went to ask him. This guy did not know how to keep secrets at all, and told the truth after being stuffed with a piece of divine metal. Instantly, the entire martial arts academy was in an uproar. Ling Han was crippled. He failed to break through to the heavenly venerable tier, and reportedly suffered extremely serious Dao injuries that could not possibly have a chance to recover. This news seemed to have grown wings and quickly spread to the Outerium battlefield, causing a huge uproar. Ling Han's friends, such as the Rain Emperor, Yi and the others, all felt that it was a pity. However, the foreign battlefield was not something that could be left at will, and they could not drop everything to visit Ling Han either. However, he had many enemies, and they weren't just enemies. For example, his competitors He Yufeng, Lu Tianqian, and others were all incredibly excited. They had been happy for nothing, but it turned out that Ling Han hadn't died and had returned. However, this time, the information was conclusive. They couldn't help but laugh out loud. This fellow was finally finished. Ling Han's potential was astonishing. Therefore, whether or not he was truly crippled was of great importance. Not long after, an extraordinary big shot arrived. Chu Hao, a sixth-step celestial venerable. This was a super great figure, because he was the disciple of the seventh-step heavenly sovereign Lin Luo, and he himself had hopes of breaking through to the seventh step, so he was one of the most anticipated people in the entire origin world. In addition, Zhou Heng, Lin Xiaoyang, and other six-step heavenly venerables, as well as Lin Yu Lian, Xen Qihu, Wu Haoyang, and other rising stars, all of whom had the possibility of breaking through to the seventh step in the future. Chu Hao personally inspected Ling Han's condition. "Lord Chu, how is it?" The women were full of concern. Chu Hao frowned, and after a while he said, "You want to gather the unique power of the various major planes and transform it into your own core. This is a very creative and bold idea. However, you've absorbed too much power, and now these powers are conflicting with each other in your body. If I forcibly suppress them, I can only annihilate them one by one. This means that all your previous efforts have been in vain." The women were disappointed. Even Chu Hao couldn't do anything? Then what about Lin Luo? Ling Han muttered, "In other words, if I want to change the current situation, I can only give up everything and start from scratch. This would mean going back to an epoch ago, to the time when he was still a ninth heaven celestial king." "That's right." Chu Hao nodded. Ling Han thought for a long time, and then said, "Let me think about it. Before I try all methods, I don't want to waste my previous efforts." "Sure." Chu Hao nodded. He was very appreciative of Ling Han's decision, because he had the same character. No matter what the situation was, he would never give up hope, even if that hope didn't exist for others and the success rate was 0. "Just call me if there's anything." He left a message talisman with his divine sense inside. After tearing it open, the divine sense would take shape and have the combat power of a 5th-step celestial master. His original body would also sense it. Ling Han nodded and said solemnly, "I will remember your kindness." Chu Hao smiled. This person was a bit like himself in the past, and he had a good impression of him. As long as one is alive, never give up hope. He patted Ling Han's shoulder lightly and then left. However, after he left, Ling Han didn't get better. Naturally, everyone believed that Ling Han was really crippled, and even a 6th-step celestial master couldn't do anything about it. Some people felt that it was a pity. This was an incomparably monstrous genius. It was such a pity that he didn't become a celestial master to fight against the frenzy. However, some people snorted and said, "What's the use of a person being strong? Can he defeat the frenzy?" Ling Han, on the other hand, let go of his worries. He often walked around the martial arts courtyard to change his mood. His situation was noticed by everyone. There was a bloody hole in his heart that couldn't be healed. This also made people sigh that Ling Han was really done for. From then on, Ling Han's name would no longer be on the genius list. However, Ling Han didn't give up at all. Actually, he had a way out. At most, he would follow the rules and cultivate like others. With his monstrous talent, he could still become the strongest celestial master, but he could only be one of them. However, he didn't want to take this step unless he had no other choice. Firstly, he was unwilling. Secondly, he believed that heaven would never bar one's way. There must be a way. Time passed slowly, and the news of Ling Han becoming a cripple also became old news. It would only occasionally be mentioned. Some people sighed, while others mocked and ridiculed. For example, Zhuo Kai was the more active type. Yu Wudi was already dead, and Zhuo Kai could be said to be the only person in the martial arts courtyard who had an old grudge with Ling Han. Previously, he had been restraining himself from offending Ling Han, but at this time, he finally didn't have any scruples. He continued to speak ill of Ling Han. No matter if it was in public or in private, he was doing his best to humiliate Ling Han, making it sound like Ling Han was worthless. He was completely unafraid that Ling Han would come to find trouble with him. A cripple, what the hell was he afraid of? However, when the Empress heard about it, she directly went over and killed him without a second word. Putting aside the fact that he wasn't a disciple of the martial arts courtyard, even if he was, the Empress had such a proud personality and offended Ling Han, so he would definitely be sentenced to death by her. Because Zhuo Kai wasn't a disciple of the academy, even if the Empress killed him, it wouldn't be against the rules. However, once the news spread, would Zhuo Bing leave the matter at that? He would definitely come looking for the Empress to take revenge. The Empress was unafraid. Putting aside the fact that they still had trump cards on their side, even her own battle prowess was already on par with those at the second level, so she was completely unconcerned. The only person she was concerned about was Ling Han. Chu Hao came from another of my works, Eternal Heavenly Emperor. Lin Luo came from my novel, Sweep the Universe, and Zhou Heng came from Sword Shaking the Ninth Heaven. It didn't matter even if he hadn't. It didn't affect his reading of the Divine Tao Alchemy Venerables. Chapter 2768. Ling Han tried all sorts of methods, yet all of them proved to be futile. Could it be that he really had no choice but to give up? Ling Han calmed himself down, abandoned all utilitarian thoughts, and lived the most ordinary life. Accompanied by the Empress and the others, he walked over mountains and rivers, and his mind became calmer and calmer. One night, he was sitting on the edge of the pond, looking at the stars reflected in the water. When Li Si-chan mischievously threw a stone into the pond, it immediately caused ripples. He suddenly froze, as if he was about to catch something, but when he stretched out his hand, he did not touch anything. For a moment, he could not resist the itch in his heart. A large door opened a crack for him, but he just had to forget the scenery inside. He lowered his head, and the stars in the pond had already turned into countless broken shadows. Ling Han had an epiphany, but he felt that it was just a little bit off. Under his insistence, everyone stayed here. Ling Han sat by the pond every day, and when more than 70 days had passed, he suddenly had an epiphany, and laughed loudly. Since the core was broken, then let it be broken. Why did he condense the core? It was because he wanted to be able to rely on the core to continuously produce power even after leaving a dimension, so that he, a first step heavenly venerable, could reach a height that no one could reach. However, he had fallen into a misunderstanding. That was, a dimension did indeed have a core, but what about 10 dimensions or 100 dimensions? They each had a core, but they had not fused together. This was originally a unique power, so how could it be fused? Ling Han had indeed fused them before, but from now on he was only rubbing them together, and had not truly fused them into one. Thus, at the most crucial moment, the power of the frost flame dimension exploded, causing the entire core to go berserk, and his body to explode. This was a path that could not be taken. No matter how freakish he was, it was useless because it was fundamentally wrong. So there was no other way? Ling Han shook his head. In fact, the solution had long been given to him, but he did not realize it. He magnified the picture a little more, and saw himself as an origin world. Then, every cell in his body was a plane, and every cell carried the power of the plane. What would happen then? He immediately began to experiment, no longer trying to fuse with the power in his body. Instead, he let nature take its course, treating himself as a large world. All the power in his body could evolve and develop, as long as it could be used by him. Of course, this sounded simple, but to make so many chaotic forces explode at the same time and be used by him instead of clashing with each other, that was definitely not something that could be done in a moment. As he sat there, time continued to pass. 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years. In the blink of an eye, another 7 million years had passed. Ling Han let out a long howl as he suddenly stood up. Boom! Earth-shaking energy surged out from his body, causing even the sky to tremble. Not only had his combat strength recovered, but it had also increased by a large margin. After all, he now had the unique power of the fiery frost plane. Husband! The women were all pleasantly surprised. Ling Han cracked a smile. I've worried you all these years. The women all shook their heads, but tears rolled down their cheeks. They had always been worried about Ling Han. How proud was their man, yet he had become a publicly acknowledged cripple. It must have made him feel extremely miserable. Now, he finally stood up again. The Empress smiled. I've always believed in you, husband. Let's immediately return to the academy and let those people slap their faces. Zhu Xian'er said. N. The women all nodded. They all held their breaths. No rush, Ling Han said with a smile. Let's go to another plane. The women all gaped. You just recovered, why are you going again? Ling Han nodded. Believe me. He had now truly comprehended and treated himself as an origin world, able to accommodate the power of various planes. Then he actually had no limits, and the power in his body could be infinitely strong. In other words, even after he reached the 7th step, the power of this first step could still continuously increase, far surpassing the limit of the 7th step. But before that, he had to first comprehend the true meaning of creating plane power in the origin world. At that time, he could jump out of the origin world, and his body could derive new plane power. Frenzy only incarnated into a plane, but Ling Han was the entire origin world. Who was higher and who was lower in this situation? Of course, to be higher in the situation also required cultivation. If the difference in cultivation was too great, then everything would be useless. Thus, Ling Han wanted to comprehend more power of existential plane until he could create his own power of existential plane. Then, even if he advanced 1, 2, or 3 steps, his body would still be able to continuously produce new power of existential plane, causing his strength to become limitless. Frenzy can create heavenly venerables at will, and if I reach great accomplishment, not only can I do the same, But even a seventh-step heavenly venerable can be created with a single thought. Ling Han thought. If word of this got out, everyone would definitely think that Ling Han was crazy. Immortal kings could only rely on themselves to cultivate step by step, while heavenly venerables could be cultivated to the seventh step. But Ling Han was full of confidence. At that time he could really do it. Because he was the origin world, and it was the origin world that could decide everything, so what couldn't he do? Come, I'll bring you to the martial Jing dimension first. Ling Han waved his hand, and all the women were wrapped in his power. Then their figures gradually disappeared. If there were heavenly venerables here, they would definitely be shocked, because this was not ordinary spatial movement. In any corner of the entire fiery frost dimension, it was impossible to find any trace of Ling Han and the others. They directly passed through the origin world and went to the martial Jing dimension. This was incomparably inconceivable. When Zhou Heng went to the immortal realms, he had the guidance of the planar lighthouse. But if he tore open the planar barrier, there was no telling where he would end up. Ling Han was different, because his body had the unique power of the martial Jing dimension. As long as he sensed it, the martial Jing dimension would light up in the darkness like a lighthouse, allowing him to easily go there. 19 years later, they arrived at the martial Jing dimension. The speed was so fast that it was unbelievable. Ling Han went to the Shudu dimension and continued to extract the unique power there. Now that he was suddenly enlightened, it was naturally easy for him. In less than 3 years, he had mastered this power and condensed it in a cell in his body. Continue. He and the women went to the next dimension. In less than 3 or 4 years, he had gained another bit of dimension power. The origin world now only had 1 super high-level dimension, 99 high-level dimensions, 9,999 mid-level dimensions, and as for the low-level dimensions, there were as many as hundreds of thousands of them. Ling Han strolled, and after more than 3 million years, he suddenly discovered that he had actually arrived in a foreign dimension. In other words, as long as he took 1 more step forward, he would be able to return to the immortal territory. After knowing this, the women could not help but become excited. Although the place where Ling Han was home, the immortal territory still had their friends and relatives. More than an epoch had passed. How was everyone? Chapter 2770. How dare you? Everyone whispered. The foreign realm cultivators were generally more valiant than the people of the celestial realm, and they all stared at Ling Han's group with unfriendly gazes. Lord Huaijian broke through to the heavenly venerable tier, the whole world celebrated, and you guys actually dared to cause trouble? Ho ho, don't think you're invincible with 18 lotuses. Someone stood out with a sneer. It wasn't just one. In the blink of an eye, 7 18 lotus elites appeared, surrounding Ling Han's group. The dignity of a heavenly venerable was not to be blasphemed. You're still not going to surrender? An 18 lotus elite barked. With his vision, he could naturally tell with a single glance. In this group of people, only bewitching Maiden Row had reached 18 lotus. The others had only reached 10 lotus, and there were even 2 people who had not even reached 10 lotus. That was naturally Ling Han and the Empress, because one was a pseudo-heavenly venerable, and the other was 1 step away from the category of celestial king, returning to simplicity. Bewitching Maiden Row crossed her palms. Come fight. She took the initiative to charge out. Shwa, there was already a whip in her hand, and she lashed out at the 7 18 lotus elites. This was a celestial tool that Ling Han had made for her. After so many years, the amount of divine metal Ling Han possessed was astonishing, enough for the women not only to have one, but even their clothes could be made of divine metal with extremely high offensive and defensive capabilities. Thus, bewitching Maiden Row charged out without fear. Taking a step back, even if she didn't have this outfit, didn't she still have Ling Han and the Empress supporting her from behind? Ancestral tool. These 18 lotus elites all humphed, and all drew out their own celestial tools. Reaching the level of 9th heaven, how could they not obtain celestial tools? Ding ding dang dang, the 8 of them fought fiercely. Those that could advance into 9th heaven, especially in a low-level plane, were all definitely supreme prodigies, so bewitching Maiden Row not only did not gain the upper hand, but was instead suppressed. However, these 18 Lotus elites soon discovered to their dismay that the other actually had a celestial tool armor, and there were extremely high-level seals flickering on it, possessing astonishing defensive capabilities. This was something that Ling Han had refined, and it possessed a portion of the might of the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Added with the power of divine metal, even a ninth Heaven Celestial King wouldn't be able to break through it. The downside was that these runes couldn't be permanently used. They needed to be redrawn after a period of time. If it were another Celestial Venerable, who would do such a thing? Wouldn't they find it troublesome? But Ling Han didn't care. If he didn't spend time on his wife, where would he spend it? Bewitching Maiden Ro did not need to worry about defense at all, and only needed to continuously attack. This gave her too much of an advantage. She only attacked and didn't defend, which was extremely impressive. However, though the 7 elites with 18 lotuses could not take down Bewitching Maiden Ro, it was not an issue for them to protect themselves. After all, their battle prowess was not inferior to Bewitching Maiden Ro's. What more when the 7 of them had joined forces? Bewitching Maiden Ro gave a tender rebuke, and lightning flickered on her body. The whip very quickly condensed with a 9-colored divine light. 5 elemental thunder. This was a celestial venerable technique, and even she could only use it a few times. Furthermore, it was fortunate that she had the protection of the treasured armor on her body, which allowed her to take the attacks head-on. Otherwise, she would not have dared to hold back her powerful move under the joint attacks of 7 great elites. But once she used her powerful move, her battle prowess shot straight up with a Z. Ping 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 ping. The whip swept past, its sharpness unparalleled. So what if there were 7 great elites? They were instantly slaughtered into a mess, and no one dared to face her head-on. That was a celestial venerable technique. How difficult was it to inherit? Even a 9th Heaven Celestial King could not possibly inherit it, if he did not have a celestial venerable as his master and father. The spectators were all dumbfounded. Even 7 great elites could not suppress this woman. Heavens, could it be that she was a pseudo-heavenly venerable? Stand down. A woman's voice filled with dignity rang out, and could not be resisted. The 7 great elites all held their breaths, and retreated to the side. A woman walked out from the mountains, walking over on air. There was no extraordinary brilliance circling her body, yet she exuded an aura that made one tremble. She was a member of the angel tribe, and a pair of massive white wings spread out behind her back. There was a golden halo above her head, and she was astonishingly beautiful. Ling Han's eyes involuntarily narrowed slightly. This was an old acquaintance, Moon in the Well. Back then, he had used the power of the Black Tower on the Heaven Desolation Mountain to unleash a massacre. Only Huai Jian and Moon in the Well had obtained the favor of the celestial venerable Heng Huang, and had treasured tools to protect themselves. Only then did they escape the calamity. After so many years, Huai Jian had become a celestial venerable, and this woman had actually also become a pseudo-celestial venerable. Greetings, milady. The 7 great elites all knelt down, and paid their respects to Moon in the Well. Some of them were even a good few times older than Moon in the Well, but martial art had never been judged by age, and only by cultivation level and power. Moon in the Well nodded. She was barefooted, and her skin was snow-white, exuding a pure and holy air. Even if the demon tribe naturally hated the angel tribe, they had to admit that this was a beauty that could move even their hearts. Who are you? Moon in the Well shouted coldly at Bewitching Maiden Ro. Bewitching Maiden Ro giggled and said, "Little girl is quite pretty. Why don't you become a servant girl to brew tea for my husband?" When these words were spoken, everyone was in an uproar. Insolence to insolence. They actually dared to make a pseudo-celestial venerable become someone's servant girl. Whether it was to brew tea or to sleep with others, that was a massive insult. In the whole world, a celestial venerable was the strongest, and who could humiliate a celestial venerable? Everyone was furious, and wanted nothing more than to tear Ling Han into pieces. Ling Han saw that everyone's eyes were on him, and couldn't help but cry out in his mind that he was innocent. It wasn't him who had said it, so why did they have to point the spearhead at him? Moon in the Well was also cold. At first, on account that it was not easy for you to cultivate to 18 lotuses, I only wanted to give you a light punishment, but you insist on seeking your own death. She moved and grabbed out at Bewitching Maiden Ro. Bewitching Maiden Ro naturally could not possibly be a match for a pseudo-celestial venerable, so she hurriedly called out, "Big Sister Luan Xing, save me." Peng the Empress moved, and very casually waved her jade-like palm. The moon in the well was sent flying, crashing through countless mountain rocks in its path, and sinking into the 10,000 Swords Mountain. Her attacks were much heavier than Bewitching Maiden Ro's, and Moon in the Well was a pseudo-heavenly venerable, so it could also withstand collision. She directly smashed a hole through the 10,000 Swords Mountain. This everyone was speechless. This was actually an Empyrean. It was said that an Empyrean could not be humiliated. Huai Jian could not be slandered by others. This person was enough. You want to arrest the people around her and punish them at the slightest provocation, and where is the dignity of this sky sovereign? Haha, when did such a powerful fellow Taoist appear in this plane? There was a long laugh, and several figures shot down from 10,000 Swords Mountain. Seeing this, everyone hurriedly kneeled down. Greetings, Celestial Sovereign Eternal Desolation. Greetings, Empyrean Scarlet Blaze. Greetings, Empyrean Yellow Springs. Greetings, Heavenly Venerable Hugging Sword. 4 Empyreans appeared together. This lineup was too powerful. Any one of them had the strength to sweep away the world. The 4 heavenly venerables clasped their hands behind their backs, their eyes fixed on the Empress. The Empress couldn't be bothered to disguise herself any longer, and her true appearance was immediately revealed. What? This is actually a human woman. Didn't the celestial realm plane already have a truce with us? Why has a heavenly venerable suddenly appeared? Is this a new one? Rumor has it that the celestial realm plane no longer has a heavenly venerable overseeing it. Everyone exclaimed in shock, incredibly astonished. Who exactly are you? Huai Jian asked. After advancing into the heavenly venerable tier, his aura had become more and more stable. Chapter 2771. Ling Han chuckled, and similarly removed his disguise. He took a step forward and said, "Huai Jian, do you still recognize me?" Huai Jian stared at Ling Han for a while, and his eyes suddenly lit up. "It's you." Beside him, Heavenly Venerable Heng Huang also recognized Ling Han, and couldn't help but fly into a rage. If it weren't for his relationship with Ling Han, and Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu had been released, he might have already advanced to the second step, and become the strongest legend. But because of that destruction, he had failed at the last step, and hadn't improved in the slightest in an epoch. Ling Han nodded. Long time no see. His current situation had improved countless times, and he no longer cared about Huai Jian. Good. Huai Jian smirked coldly. Back then, you used your heavenly venerable treasure to commit murder. This time, let's see how you escape. Although there was also a heavenly venerable on Ling Han's side, there were 4 on their side. Most importantly, this was their world, and the Empress was suppressed by the power of the plane, and couldn't draw on the unique power of this place. As long as there was enough time, the power in the Empress's body would be exhausted, and they would be easily suppressed. Unfortunately, he couldn't have imagined that the Empress had also condensed a power core, and didn't have to worry about the problem of power exhaustion at all. Moreover, her power had reached the second step, and she alone could sweep through this plane. Ling Han was even more terrifying, with the power of the third step. Heavenly Venerable Heng Huang directly moved. He was a veteran Heavenly Venerable, and also the strongest elite of this plane. There was practically no one else, and he didn't need to have any misgivings when doing things. Ling Han very casually waved a hand, and Heavenly Venerable Heng Huang's large hand was slapped away. We finally meet again, and should catch up. What's the hurry? This move caused everyone to be dumbfounded again. What was going on? That was a Heavenly Venerable's move, but it was slapped away as if he was swatting away a mosquito, and it was incredibly easy. How could they believe this? Quasi-Empyrean, Huai Jian, Huang Quan, and Empyrean Qi Yen all frowned. They still had this bit of insight, but this made them frown. How could a quasi-Empyrean be so awesome? It wasn't as if they had gone to the immortal region and been suppressed by the power of the world there. It wouldn't be strange if they could only display the strength of a quasi-Empyrean. What a strange junior. Heavenly Sovereign Heng Huang's eyes shone with a ferocious light. They had all been warned by Zhou Heng that they were not to enter the celestial realm for the rest of their lives. Thus, they had not been able to find trouble with Ling Han. But now, Ling Han had come to him, and he couldn't do anything about it. His chest was slightly swollen, and the pitch-black horn on his head was glowing. He was preparing for a big move. To an Empyrean, this was shockingly fast. Before long, he had finished building up his power and was already charging toward Ling Han. In the past, Ling Han could be compared to Huai Jian. Now that Huai Jian had stepped into the Empyrean stage, it was normal for Ling Han to become a quasi-Empyrean. He swooped over, bringing with him a supreme divine might. With this all-out attack, even the heaven and earth trembled. The Empress took a step forward, blocking in front of Ling Han, and then delivered a slap at Heavenly Sovereign Heng Huang. Heavenly Sovereign Heng Huang was sent flying without any suspense, crashing heavily into the 10,000 Swords Mountain. The mountain peak immediately crumbled, yet Heavenly Sovereign Heng Huang's figure did not stop, and continued to fly into the skies. Soon, he became a small black dot, and could no longer be seen. Everyone was speechless, and felt a chill run down their spine. A mighty Heavenly Sovereign was actually sent flying with a single slap? Heavens, just what kind of freaks were this man and woman? Even Huai Jian, Huang Quan, and Heavenly Venerable Qi Yan were stunned speechless. Though every Heavenly Venerable was a top-notch prodigy, they had to admit that Heavenly Sovereign Heng Huang was the strongest among them. But even the strongest had been sent flying by a single slap from the Empress. What kind of massive gap in strength was this? Even if they were Heavenly Venerables, so what? Their scalps were numb, and their limbs were cold. Ling Han smiled calmly. It's fine. I'm just here to have some fun today, and to see how my old friends are doing. How could Huai Jian and the other Heavenly Venerables be willing to believe him? In the past, the other realm had almost destroyed the celestial realm. If it were not for the repeated miracles, the celestial realm would have long since been swallowed and fused with them. Now that an incredibly outstanding elite had appeared in the celestial realm, would he let them go? They hurriedly sent out waves of divine sense, summoning even more elites to surround and attack the Empress together. After all, this was the realm of the other realm. The stronger one was, the more they would be suppressed by the heaven and earth. True enough, this move of the Empress drew the attention of the heaven and earth of the other realm, and heavenly tribulation continued to descend. She was completely indifferent. This kind of attack did not hurt her at all, and she was not afraid that the other realm would isolate her power, because she had not drawn any power from this realm at all. A first-step Heavenly Venerable was still unable to draw on the 6 essential powers of the origin realm. However, being struck continuously like this, the Empress was also annoyed. Are you annoyed or not? Seeing this, Ling Han pressed down on the Empress's hand, and then said to the sky, "You still haven't retreated? Do you want me to cripple you?" He exuded an impressive aura that directly pressed down on the heaven and earth. Instantly, the lightning that filled the sky disappeared completely. Even the heaven and earth could be scared into retreat. Huai Jian and the others felt their limbs turn cold. Even they were not willing to become enemies with the heaven and earth. After all, the source of their power was that unique mighty power of the other realm. Once they left this place, they could only be considered pseudo-heavenly venerables. Furthermore, their power would not advance, and their battle prowess would fall as well. However, with a shout from Ling Han, the heavenly tribulation had retreated. What kind of power was this? The Empress was already strong enough, but looking at it now, it was clearly Ling Han who was even more frightening. What had happened to the celestial realm that such 2 monsters had appeared? Ling Han spread his hands. Now, can we properly reminisce about the past? When his words fell, shio. 9 heavenly venerables arrived together, and then Heavenly Venerable Heng Huang and the moon in the well also returned with disheveled hair and dirty faces. All of a sudden, 13 heavenly venerables and 1 pseudo-heavenly venerable had appeared here. This kind of lineup was incredibly powerful, and also proved that the foreign realm was currently at its peak. That was because previously, Ling Han had traveled to a great many low-level dimensions, and there were not even so many elites among them. Does the celestial realm want to restart the war? The heavenly venerable netherworld asked. Behind him, a river of death soared into the sky. This was his Tao, and those who touched it would die. In the past, if Zhou Heng had not appeared, the celestial realm should have already been destroyed. Who would have thought that only one epoch had passed, and it was the celestial realm's turn to launch a counterattack against the foreign realm? Ling Han smiled and shook his head. I did not represent the celestial realm. Alright, I won't tease you guys anymore. He now had a bigger picture. The grudges of the past had also been swept into a forgotten corner by him, and he merely sighed. He did not speak of the matter of madness, nor did he think of bringing these people to the fiery frost dimension. After all, the two great dimensions had stood against each other, and who knew how many people had died because of this? Ling Han was not magnanimous enough to return good for evil. He sat for a while and then set off. This was also a warning to these people not to think that one epoch had passed, and Zhou Heng had long forgotten about this place. He was still here. After he left, the great heavenly venerables of the foreign realm were all speechless. Indeed, Zhou Heng's warning was from an epoch ago, and he had not appeared again. This caused some heavenly venerables to become restless, wanting to restart the war. Fortunately, Ling Han had come early. Otherwise, if they had really started the war, wouldn't they all have been killed? Chapter 2772. Ling Han and the others soon arrived at the passageway between the two realms. There was a seal left behind by Zhou Heng here. It was not very powerful, but it was a serious warning. This was left behind by a 6-step heavenly venerable, so who dared to take a step past it? Ling Han reached out and pressed his hand on the seal. With a wave of his divine sense, Qi, the seal immediately burned and disappeared. Let's go. They entered the passageway between the two realms. Though there had been a wild wave of energy here, it had naturally calmed down now and was calm. Very soon, the group passed through here. Though the war had calmed, once bitten, 3 years shy, and how long had the foreign realm fought the celestial realm? 20 to 30 epochs. Thus, even if the war had calmed, there were still guards here. Who is it? When they arrived at the passageway between the two realms, the 7 ascending origin tier guards immediately shouted, raising the weapons in their hands. A familiar scent wafted over, and Ling Han looked up. Though the spiritual qi here was the weakest of all the realms he had been to, it was the most familiar to him, and he really felt like he had returned home. However, unfortunately, the heaven and earth immediately reacted. Quang, lightning appeared, and struck madly at Ling Han and the Empress. This was the weakest realm in the whole origin world. The tolerance of the heaven and earth was the smallest, and even heavenly venerables and pseudo-heavenly venerables would be targeted if they walked openly in this realm. Seeing this, those ascending origin tier guards all paled in shock. They could not see through the cultivation level of Ling Han and the others, but that was fine. How could they not know the might of the heavenly tribulation? With this kind of might, they would be turned into ashes if they were struck casually. They hurriedly issued a warning. This was far beyond what they could handle. The Empress was furious. Was there no end to this? She glared angrily at the skies, having the urge to destroy the heavens. Let's go. Ling Han smiled and made a grabbing motion. Xiu, all of them disappeared. Their first stop was still to find the core of the realm. This was a small matter to them, and they soon found the place. Ling Han only stretched out a hand, and the unique power of the celestial realm was drawn over by him, fusing into one of his cells. And Ling Han had also threatened it, so the heaven and earth naturally did not dare to target him and the Empress anymore. They went out to find their parents and friends. Under Ling Han's lead, they almost immediately arrived at their destination. After a great era passed, this place had also changed greatly. At first, it was just a barren mountain. Then it developed into a market, a small town, and now it has become a huge city. Ling Cheng. Everyone looked at the two large words on the city gate. This was written by an expert, and it gave off a boundless deterrent force. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. This is Big Brother's doing. He nodded. When Big Brother wrote these two words, he should have been a third firmament immortal king. I wonder how strong he is now. They entered the city and paid a star stone as the entrance fee. The group entered the city. Because so much time had passed, and the changes here were also astonishing, they did not directly go to find Feng Piyun and the others. Instead, they first found an inn eating and drinking as they inquired about the current situation. Very soon, Ling Han had an idea. The city was now divided into three factions, which were the Cheng family, the Feng clan, and the Murong clan. They jointly controlled Ling Cheng. The Cheng family naturally belonged to Ling Han's younger sister, Ling Yuan. Her husband's surname was Cheng, and now he had children, grandchildren, and grandchildren. It was unknown how many generations, and there were many children and grandchildren. The Feng clan was Feng Puyun's descendants. Unexpectedly, this big brother also married and had children in the end. The Murong clan naturally belonged to Murong Qing's descendants. The three major forces all had a large number of people, but they were not united. Instead, they were fighting for power, and it was very unpleasant. Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head. This was definitely not Feng Piyun and Murong Qing's original intention, but after countless generations, the friendship between them would naturally become indifferent. He made some inquiries, and sure enough, Feng Piyun and Murong Qing were both in seclusion. It was said that they were already sixth heaven celestial kings, and were in the process of breaking through to seventh heaven. They had not appeared for tens of millions of years. Thus, their descendants began to make a fuss. Ling Han shook his head. This was the common problem of all great clans. No matter how impressive the first generation who founded the clan was, as the inheritance continued, the descendants would slowly deteriorate. Big news! Big news! Someone suddenly said loudly. I just received news that the Feng clan and Murong clan are going to fight to the death. What's going on? Everyone asked in shock. The two great clans were going to fight to the death. Were they not afraid that the Cheng family would take advantage of them? It is said that it is for a blood ginseng. That is a super celestial medicine that can allow an ascending origin tier to become a celestial king, that person said. Gasp. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. A celestial king had appeared out of nowhere. How astonishing was that? The Bifeng clan and Murong clan each had a sixth heaven celestial king, but below them, the two clans only had one celestial king each. Furthermore, it was a first heaven celestial king. Then, the significance of an additional celestial king was too great, and they could occupy an overwhelming advantage. Why did the two clans ignore the Cheng family? Because the Cheng family did not even have a single celestial king. And it was precisely because of this that the three great clans could exist side by side had always been a great mystery. Because no matter how one thought about it, the Qing family did not have such qualifications. And now, a blood ginseng could allow an ascending origin tier to break through to Celestial King, so the two great clans naturally became envious. In any case, there was no need to care about the Qing family. After one was born, the celestial path would slowly disappear. Now that an ascending origin tier had broken through to Celestial King, there was no need to take the celestial path anymore. They had returned to the most ancient times. Ling Han immediately stood up. The descendants of Feng Piyun and Murong Qing were no different from his own descendants. No matter how unfilial his descendants were, he could not just watch as they killed each other. They arrived at the Feng clan. In the battle for the blood ginseng, the Feng clan temporarily had the upper hand and snatched the blood ginseng. However, the Murong clan also sent out all their elites, surrounding the Feng clan, and demanding that the Feng clan hand over the blood ginseng. Otherwise, they would meet on the battlefield. Both sides had sent out elites, and the situation could be triggered at any moment. Ling Han strode out and walked into the crowd. "Who are you?" When the people on both sides saw an unrelated person appear, they all turned to look at Ling Han. Ling Han smiled calmly. "I am brothers with your ancestor." "Stop all of you. Are you going to make a joke out of yourselves by making a family quarrel?" Seeing Ling Han act so matter-of-factly, everyone was enraged. You, an unprepossessing guy, actually dared to pretend to be their elder? What? You said you were the ancestor's brother, and wanted them to call you ancestor as well. Where did this madman come from? Hurry up and chase him away. Immediately, someone moved, grabbing at Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head and stretched out his hands. The heaven and earth instantly reacted, and endless spiritual qi gathered. Several hundred ginsengs sprouted out of thin air, continuously growing stronger at a speed visible to the naked eye. The roots that were exposed on the ground were as red as blood. Blood ginseng. Everyone exclaimed in shock, and the person who had moved previously also stopped abruptly. What Ling Han was doing was forcibly extracting the power of heaven and earth, creating celestial medicines and making them grow quickly. This was a nature-defying move. Unfortunately, the celestial realm was not as powerful as him at present, and could only be controlled by him to do as he pleased. Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 2774. If it was before Ling Han's accident, Celestial Venerable Yu Su definitely wouldn't have dared to attack Ling Han. Even Celestial Venerable Red Cloud wasn't Ling Han's match, let alone him. That was why he went to ask his master. However, before Feng Qing could act, the news of Ling Han being crippled spread, and after the investigation of a sixth-step Celestial Venerable, this matter was confirmed, so there was naturally no need for Feng Qing to act. For a third-step Celestial Venerable to deal with a cripple, wasn't that insulting this Celestial Venerable? Even Yu Su himself didn't know to what extent he was using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. He could have casually sent someone to deal with Ling Han, but if he couldn't personally avenge the death of his son, his heart wouldn't be at peace. Therefore, Celestial Venerable Yu Su personally acted. His speed was very fast, and he couldn't let Ling Han enter the extraterritorial battlefield. Otherwise, he would have misgivings when he acted. If someone found out that he killed his comrade, even a seven-step Celestial Venerable wouldn't be able to protect him, especially when Ling Han had previously made such a great contribution to the Yuan world and was still on the overall ranking. No one would be able to shake his position for at least a few dozen epochs. In a valley, Celestial Venerable Yu Su finally intercepted Ling Han's group. Ling Han, where do you think you're going? He said coldly. Xiao, his figure appeared, carrying a dense murderous aura. The pain of losing his son twisted his heart, causing his eyes to turn red. Whether he was a good person or a bad person, a sinner or a meritorious servant, this might be left for history to judge, but he was definitely a kind father. Ling Han revealed a faint smile. Why did he have to return to the academy and remove his identity as a disciple? First, he wanted to spread the news that he was going to the extraterritorial battlefield and lure out those who harbored ill intentions against him. He was now a cripple, and though there were still ninth heaven celestial kings by his side, a quasi-celestial venerable was enough to deal with them. Second, without the identity of an academy disciple, he could relax the thief's murderous intent. Even if the matter of this battle was leaked, it was just an ordinary vendetta, and he didn't need to bear any responsibility. That Celestial Venerable Yu Su would appear was within his expectations. What he wanted to know was if there were others. For example, Zhu Bing. His son had been slapped to death by the Empress, but at that time, the Empress had the status of a disciple of the martial arts institution to protect her, so would this person come over now? Now, he was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, but who knew how many tigers would show up? Yu Su, it's been a long time, Ling Han said. Among the people he hated the most, Yu Su was definitely in the top 3. Back then, when the other side invaded, Feng Qing, 9-5, and Green Flame's Empyrean powers not only didn't defend against the enemy, they instead continuously hindered them. Meanwhile, Yu Su even more so wanted to seize his things again and again, kill his people. Had and was to kill. Celestial T's Venri, He Ling Haunt. Li, Tian's Chin, I Li's. Celestial Chin Chin, too, but he definitely couldn't tolerate traitors and had to kill them. It's been a very, very long time, the Imperial Void Celestial King said menacingly. His eyes were fixed on Ling Han the entire time. He wouldn't kill Ling Han so easily. He definitely had to make this despicable brat suffer enough and suffer enough torture. Only then would he kill him. You are the strongest in the celestial realm, yet you didn't appear when the celestial realm needed you. Furthermore, you harmed your compatriots in the celestial realm and helped outsiders. How can a beast like you have the face to live? Ling Han said sarcastically. Celestial Venerable Yu Su wasn't angered. If he lost his composure so easily, how could he have broken through to the Celestial Venerable tier? He merely smiled faintly, but his killing intent became more and more intense. How do you want to die? He asked. Old geezer, you're the one who should die. The Empress rushed out, raising her hands and striking out at Yu Su. Boom, her might soared into the skies. Celestial King Yu Su was disdainful at first. The moment the Empress made her move, he could clearly tell that the other was a first-step Celestial Venerable. This made him slightly surprised, but that was all. Could it be that a second-step Celestial Venerable couldn't suppress a first step? But when he discovered the might of the Empress's strike, he was moved. So strong, this definitely wasn't the might of a first step. The two of them exchanged a blow, and both of their figures trembled as they retreated repeatedly. The Celestial Venerable Yu Su stood still. He hadn't suffered a loss in this blow, but he hadn't gained much advantage either. He knew that it hadn't been long since he advanced into the second step, and his battle prowess couldn't compare to veteran second-step Celestial Venerables, but wasn't it natural and right that a second step suppressed a first step? This woman, how could she be so powerful? Could it be that those who were with Ling Han were all super freaks? He frowned. Though his strength had a slight advantage, it wasn't an easy thing to defeat the Empress. This wasn't easy. That was what he thought, but Celestial Venerable Yu Su naturally didn't have the slightest thought of giving up. This was the best chance to deal with Ling Han, and he still had the advantage on the battlefield, though it wouldn't be as easy as he imagined. He'd just have to spend some effort. The Empress was a defender, and if she defended for a long time, she would definitely lose. As long as he was given a chance, he would be able to capture Ling Han. Of course, if it was possible, Celestial Venerable Yu Su still wanted to capture everyone, torture and kill them one by one in front of Ling Han, and let him also have a taste of losing his loved ones. Ah, that's right, this brat also had a son. Celestial Venerable Yu Su made a move and attacked the Empress. This first step Celestial Venerable couldn't be underestimated. The Empress let out a clear whistle and met him fearlessly. She wasn't as overcautious as Celestial Venerable Yu Su thought, because Ling Han's battle prowess was even stronger than hers, and he could break through to the next step at any time, so what need was there for her to worry? The two of them battled. Ever since the Empress broke through to the Celestial Venerable realm, she had yet to battle a true Celestial Venerable. Thus, her fighting spirit was blazing, and she fought very aggressively, attacking continuously. This made Celestial Venerable Yu Su very angry. Do you think you're really a second-step Celestial Venerable? He, too, roared loudly and unleashed his Celestial Venerable technique, clashing head-on with the Empress. The two great Celestial Venerables fought fiercely, stirring up a terrifying storm. Stars fell, mountains were easily flattened, and the seas were instantly vaporized. This was a collision of power that surpassed regulations, and the destructive power was too terrifying. However, Celestial Venerable Yu Su couldn't suppress the Empress no matter what. He was astonished. Logically speaking, under such a high level of suppression from him, the Empress couldn't even catch her breath, and her power should be exhausted very quickly. After all, it was only one step. But after fighting for so long, the Empress's power was actually still able to maintain at the high level at the beginning. This was something that he couldn't believe and couldn't accept. If this went on, could he really suppress the Empress? A thought flashed in his mind, and he glanced at Ling Han. He'd better take down the main character first. This way, he could go all out. It would be best if he could take down the Empress, but if he couldn't, there wasn't any loss. Brother Yu Su, do you need this Celestial Venerable's help? It was at this moment that a voice suddenly rang out. Celestial Venerable Yu Su was first stunned, and then he was overjoyed. Brother Zhua Bing, Zhua Kai's father, a second-step celestial venerable. Yu Su was a newly advanced second-step celestial venerable, but Zhuobing had advanced much earlier than him, because when he was still in the ninth heaven, Zhuobing was already a pseudo-heavenly venerable. With two great celestial venerables joining forces, not to mention taking down Ling Han easily, even suppressing this strange one-step would not be a problem. Under the violent collision of power, all the bones in Zhuobing's body were smashed into pieces, and he completely lost his battle prowess. He took another step, and he was already back in the valley. Of course, the valley had completely disappeared now, flattened by the battle prowess of two celestial venerables. Celestial Venerable Yu Su was in a fierce battle with the Empress and didn't notice that Zhuobing had been sent flying with a slap just now. Seeing a figure shoot over, he only thought that Zhuobing had already taken down Ling Han. He laughed loudly. "Brother Zhuo, you've taken down that brat." Turning his head, Celestial Venerable Yu Su's expression instantly became extremely interesting. What's going on? In his eyes, Ling Han, who should be waiting to be captured, was instead holding on to Zhuobing with a palm, and Zhuobing's entire body was drooping like a dead dog. Seeing a ghost. A cripple took down a second-step Celestial Venerable, and in such a short period of time? Who was he trying to bluff? Celestial Venerable Yu Su was distracted for a moment and was almost hit by the Empress, causing him to retreat several miles, and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. One had to pay the price for being careless. But he didn't feel anything and just looked at Ling Han in a daze, feeling as if he had seen a ghost. Ling Han cracked a smile. Very disappointed and shocked, right? Celestial Venerable Yu Su finally calmed his emotions and said, "You're not crippled." This was a smokescreen, targeting the pit that he had buried. Ling Han shook his head. "Don't think too highly of yourself. I'm still disdainful of this." Celestial Venerable Yu Su muttered, "You were indeed crippled previously. Now, not only have you recovered, your strength has also improved." "That's right." Ling Han nodded. Celestial Venerable Yu Su turned around, and he was about to tear apart space and leave. Even Zhuobing, who was stronger than him, couldn't withstand a single blow, let alone him. He even suspected that even if Celestial Venerable Feng Qing made a move, could he do anything to Ling Han? Flee back to the Outer Realm battlefield. It was just that he had evidently overestimated his own abilities, or perhaps underestimated Ling Han's strength. Pung! The space that he had just torn apart immediately shattered, and a large hand also reached over, grabbing straight for his neck. It was Ling Han. Celestial Venerable Yu Su turned pale with fright. Though he knew that Zhuobing was taken down by Ling Han and knew that Ling Han's strength was definitely stronger, he didn't have a direct observation. Only now did he know how strong Ling Han was. Or in other words, how great was the suppression of a third-step Celestial Venerable against a second-step. He was powerless to resist, and he had already fallen into Ling Han's hands. He only felt fury and unwillingness. Back then, if he wanted to kill Ling Han, it would be as easy as flipping his hand, but now, even if he became a second-step Celestial Venerable, he still wasn't a match for Ling Han. He regretted. Regret? Ling Han sneered. "Haha, what you should regret is why didn't you put in effort for the celestial region back then? Why did you have to use your power to bully me, which resulted in today's outcome? Everything was brought upon by you. Brat, if you want to kill me, do as you please. Don't think that this venerable one will lower his head to you." Celestial Venerable Yu Su shouted. To be able to become a Celestial Venerable, he was definitely someone with a firm will. How could he be soft-hearted? "All right." Ling Han nodded, and his left hand shook. Pa. The bones in Celestial Venerable Yu Su's body were all smashed into smithereens. He then clasped his hands together, and pung! Celestial Venerable Yu Su collided with Zhuobing. The two of them were smashed into mush. There was you in me and I in you, so he did not let them down for joining hands. Ling Han casually tossed the corpses of the two great Celestial Venerables. In his eyes, Yu Su was only a minor character, and the ones that he truly remembered were Feng Qing and Jiu Wu. Qinghua was still alright, as after all, he didn't become enemies with him, and had even interacted with him for a period of time, so his bad impression of him wasn't very strong. The three of them continued forward, heading towards the extraterritorial battlefield. What made Ling Han not know whether he should feel happy or disappointed was that there was actually no one who came out to attack him anymore. Do they think that if Yu Su and Zhuobing attacked, it would definitely be hard for me to escape death, so they are too lazy to make a move, or are they the only ones who insist on killing me? Ling Han murmured. Chapter 2776. A few decades had passed, and Ling Han and the Empress finally returned to the foreign battlefield. But though they had arrived at the stronghold, it was not the original one. In this epoch, the frenzied army had launched an unknown number of attacks and caused the strongholds to fall one after another, the defensive line retreating a great deal. This was a newly built stronghold, and behind it, there was currently a new stronghold being built. The fortifications were only 1/3 complete, and there was still a long way to go before they could be completed. Ling Han and the Empress first went to cancel their leave. At this moment, the Heavenly Venerable who was holding down the fort here had naturally been replaced long ago. When he heard Ling Han and the Empress say that they were going to cancel their leave, he was surprised. What was going on? There was even such a thing as canceling one's leave? Then, he recognized that the person standing in front of him was Ling Han. Ling Han, he called out and sighed ruefully. It's already been more than an epoch, and I never thought that you would actually return. He was Zhou Yan. All those years ago, in order to fight for the 7 kills 7 violence pill, he had even exchanged blows with Ling Han. After an epoch, he had also successfully advanced into the Heavenly Venerable tier. This kind of advancement could not compare to a freak like Wu Haoyang, but no matter where it was, it could be considered fast. You, Ling Han, are only a pseudo-Heavenly Venerable. Ling Han nodded. I've finally returned. Zhou Yan couldn't help but shake his head. In the past, Ling Han had been so awe-inspiring and domineering, not even inferior to Wu Haoyang, and even had a slight advantage. But now Wu Haoyang was already at the 4th step, and Ling Han had become a cripple. Fate made fools of people, and heaven's will was unpredictable. Brother Ling, what plans do you have? Considering how freakish Ling Han had been in the past, Zhou Yan was very polite. Moreover, he had already become a Heavenly Venerable, and naturally had long forgotten that he had lost to Ling Han. What they valued was the future, not the past. Ling Han smiled. I plan to stay here for a period of time, and understand the situation of an old friend before making any plans. At that time, he would break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier, and head to the 2nd level. Zhou Yan nodded. All right, you can stay here. If you need anything, you can come find me. Thanks, Ling Han said with a smile. Zhou Yan did not have much interaction with him, yet he was willing to say such words. This was truly not easy. The news of Ling Han's return immediately caused quite a stir. Who is Ling Han? Sai, you're a newcomer from 7 trillion years ago, no wonder you don't know. What? I've been here for 7 trillion years and I'm still considered a newcomer? Of course. This Ling Han is a ferocious figure from the Ji dynasty. Go to the Dubhe rankings. Who's ranked 34th? Hiss, he's that Ling Han. Nonsense, who else could it be if not him? But he was already so powerful a great era ago, why is he still here now? AI, this is what it means to rise to the peak and then decline. Before, Ling Han used an era of bitter cultivation to defeat a 2nd-step Empyrean with a quasi-Empyrean body. His fame reached its peak, but he failed to become an Empyrean and is now a cripple. The newcomers slowly understood how powerful and monstrous Ling Han was from the mouths of the seniors, but they also felt that it was a pity that such a monstrous figure had fallen to such a miserable state. Of course, there were many newcomers who didn't believe it. A quasi-Empyrean could defeat a 2nd-step Empyrean. Why didn't he boast that he could defeat a 7th-step Empyrean? But no matter what, the current Ling Han was just a cripple who came here to spend his remaining years peacefully. He had offended many people in the past, and he might not be safe even in the world's #1 martial academy. It was different here. Infighting was strictly prohibited, or they would be executed. It could be said that it was absolutely safe here. Just a coward. Some of the newcomers were too far removed from the era when Ling Han was domineering, and they couldn't help but mock him. This is the foreign battlefield, not a place to retire. What's the point of such a person living? Internal infighting was not allowed here, so these people hung around at Ling Han's door every day, saying some mocking words, hoping that Ling Han would have the self-awareness and quickly leave on his own. Ling Han acted as if he hadn't heard them. He wanted to fish, and how many people still harbored malicious intent towards him? Additionally, a friend in need was a friend indeed. He was crippled, so how many people would come over after learning of the news? Previously, he had been in the martial academy, and the people of the foreign battlefield couldn't leave, but it was different now. It was only a difference in cultivation level, so it was very convenient for him to come and go. Not long after, Ling Han's old friends all came over. There were many people, such as the Rain Emperor, Yi Waning Moon, Mu Dushi Ji Wuming, Fire Hibiscus, and of course, there was also the large black dog and the heavenly venerable Origin Born. By now, they had all become heavenly venerables. Of course, there was also Ling Jianshui and Ling Fifan. Ling Jianshui had already become a first-step heavenly venerable, and Ling Fifan had also become a quasi-heavenly venerable. At present, he was still in the first level. "Where's Yan Xianlu?" Ling Han asked. "Sacrificed," he said. As early as 11 trillion years ago, Yan Xianlu had not come to the first level for long, and he had died in battle under the siege of the frenzied army. Ling Han couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. His friendship with Yan Xianlu was very long, and he had not thought that he would suddenly hear of the latter's death. However, even more people had grown and thrived in this kind of bloody war. For example, Mu and other peerless freaks had already become second-step heavenly venerables, and the Rain Emperor, the heavenly venerable Origin Born, and the others were not far from second step. Only Yi and the large black dog were much inferior. One step might be their end. And this was because they were in the fiery frost plane. Otherwise, even taking one step in the celestial realm would be an extravagant hope. Everyone talked about old times for a few days, but they could not leave their posts for too long either, so they all left behind some treasures. They didn't know if they would be useful to Ling Han, but it would be good if they could be of any use. They hoped that Ling Han could recover quickly. "I really miss the times when we competed against each other," Ji Wuming said. Ling Han laughed loudly. "I only hope that you can always maintain this kind of confidence." Everyone left one after another, and Ling Han's residence once again recovered its peace and quiet. In truth, there were many who had died in this period of time. Aside from Yan Xianlu, the prodigies that had come from the celestial realm had basically all died in other places, such as in Ran, Meng Feiqing, the Thousand-Word Celestial King, the Cloud Void Celestial King, and so on. This was a slaughterhouse. Though it could allow one to grow quickly, it was also filled with danger. The majority of people could only silently pass away. Ling Han was very rueful, and came before the Monument of Heroes to mourn. This was used to commemorate all the brave warriors that had sacrificed themselves here. After such a long time, the number of heroes that had died in battle was astonishing. Even with Ling Han's divine sense, it would take him some time to sweep over them. He mourned here, poured a cup of wine, and sprinkled it on the ground to those comrades of the celestial realm that had passed away. "Yo, who's the hypocrite?" someone asked from behind. "Isn't it that cripple that's afraid of death?" Someone else followed up with a laugh. "The heroes have all died in battle, yet a cripple is still dragging out an ignoble existence. No matter. The next time the frenzied army attacks, we'll let him perish on his own." There were a total of 7 people here, and they all chimed in, mocking him to the extreme. They really couldn't get used to Ling Han. A cripple actually hid here in order to survive. This was the battlefield of brave warriors, the holy shrine of heroes, so how could it accommodate a coward? The Empress was enraged and was about to make a move. Ling Han stretched out a hand to embrace her. They were only a few little brats, so there was no need to be calculative. "Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" It was at this moment that a heart-wrenching cry rang out. Chapter 2778. Ling Han fought until the sky darkened. His battle prowess was powerful, comparable to a third-step heavenly venerable. Furthermore, his power came completely from his body, as if the plane was transmitting power endlessly, but under such a fierce battle, he actually felt waves of exhaustion. This was because he was only a pseudo-heavenly venerable, after all, and the plane power in his body only had an embryonic form. It hadn't become a true plane, so the power it provided was naturally limited. Usually, he wouldn't panic even if he fought a third-step heavenly venerable, but now the pseudo-heavenly venerables here were really too many, and the simultaneous attacks of several hundred exhausted him greatly. This time, it wasn't like an era. Not only were the frenzied army more numerous, but they were also protected by divine metal, so killing them was even more difficult. Even he felt slightly strained, and the Empress was even worse off. Even her beautiful hair was a bit messy, and she was panting heavily. "You rest first." Ling Han drew the Empress into the celestial visitor residence. They only needed to recover from themselves, and didn't need to communicate with heaven and earth, so they could be anywhere. The celestial visitor residence was naturally safe. Ling Han unsheathed the divine demon sword, and went all out. Flashes of sword chi slashed out, and he used the 5-element lightning technique again, continuously blasting out terrifying lightning. With a single strike, he could kill dozens of monsters. However, there were really too many monsters, and they were still continuously surging over. Very soon, Ling Han was drowned in them. The army retreated all the way, and soon came to the second line of defense. Here, the construction of fortifications was still underway, and the city defense was far from complete. "What's going on? Why did you guys retreat?" a heavenly venerable in charge of commanding here asked. Zhou Yen told the truth, causing the other heavenly venerable to pale in shock. The frenzied attack frequency was getting faster and faster. Originally, such a large-scale attack would only appear once every few million years, but in the recent hundreds of millions of years, it had continuously accelerated, once every few 100,000 years, once every 10,000 years, once every few thousand years. When was the last time such an attack had occurred? 700 years ago. It had only been so long, and the super large-scale attack had come again. What could they do? Though they were already speeding up the construction of the second line of defense, it would still take at least another 200 years. "We can only fight to the death," Zhou Yen said. "This place definitely can't be lost, or we'll let the frenzied army charge straight in." Another Empyrean nodded. He got everyone to stop their construction and prepare for battle. In just a short while, the frenzied army attacked. "That's all," said another celestial sovereign. He had heard from Zhou Yen that Delirium had launched yet another wave of large-scale attacks, but from the looks of it, this should not be enough to make Zhou Yen and the others abandon the city and flee. Zhou Yen was also taken aback. Although the frenzied army that was chasing after them was still spread all over the mountains and plains, compared to the scene from the top of the stronghold, it was a completely different story. "Ling Han," he muttered. "What?" Another Empyrean walked over in confusion. What did he mean by this? "I think the reason why the chaotic army has become so few is probably because of one person." Zhou Yen let out a long sigh. The expression on his face was indescribably complicated. "How is this possible?" Another Empyrean cried out. "This place is suppressed by the world. Even a 7th-step Empyrean would be affected here. Compared to a quasi-Empyrean, their strength is limited. How could they block such a large-scale attack?" "Because he's Ling Han," Zhou Yen said. "Ling Han? Which Ling Han?" Another Empyrean had a strange look on his face. "The Ling Han who left his name on the leaderboard a century ago," Zhou Yen said. As expected of Ling Han, he was incomparably monstrous and powerful. That Ling Han. Another Empyrean also remembered. At this moment, the frenzied army had already attacked, and he had also joined the battle. Although his cultivation was suppressed here, and he could only display the strength of a quasi-Empyrean, he was still an Empyrean after all. His combat strength far surpassed that of a quasi-Empyrean. "Isn't he already a cripple?" he asked curiously. Zhou Yen shook his head and laughed. "If he's a cripple, then I'm the trash among trash." "HM?" Another Empyrean was surprised. He knew that Ling Han was indeed monstrous back then, but was there a need for Zhou Yan to belittle himself like this? Zhou Yan did not say anything else. The battle was too intense. Without the city's defenses, everyone could only fight a bloody battle. Countless people had sacrificed their lives for this. But because the frenzied army that was charging over had been greatly reduced in number and the battle line had been stretched out, they were still able to stabilize their footing. This caused the battle to descend into a stalemate. This was naturally because of Ling Han, but no one could care about this hero right now. That was because if they were defeated here, the outcome would be as bad as it could get. 10 days, thought. This battle lasted for a full 47 days. It was only when the second, third, and fourth levels of the Void Plane had sent their powerhouses over to provide support that the frenzied army was completely wiped out. What? Ling Han is actually fighting alone at the stronghold. After hearing this news, everyone was so shocked that they could not speak. Under the leadership of the powerhouses, the fiery frost dimension began to recover its lost territory. When they arrived at the stronghold, they saw that the city walls had been mostly destroyed. Outside the city walls, there were piles of corpses as tall as mountains, one after another. There's still the sound of fighting up ahead. Someone with sharp ears said, "It can't be that they're still fighting, right?" Someone said in a trembling voice. This was too terrifying. The number of monsters in any mountain was enough to kill a first-step heavenly venerable under normal circumstances. And here, with the suppressive power of the plane, these quasi-heavenly venerables could even bury a second-step heavenly venerable. But now, countless mountains had been cut down by Ling Han and the Empress. How could they believe it? They moved forward, passing one hill after another, which frightened them to the core. Most likely, the number of monsters killed by Ling Han and the Empress was more than all the others combined. After a few more steps, they arrived at a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. Ling Han stood alone above the pile of corpses, and hundreds of monsters were attacking in all directions. However, if one came, he would kill one. If two came, he would kill two. That towering figure was like a mountain that would never fall. In just a few breaths' time, all the monsters had been eliminated, and only Ling Han was left standing proudly at a high place. He looked down at the mountains, looking invincible. Everyone's divine sense was seized. Ling Han also sat down. After fighting fiercely for nearly 50 days, even he had reached his limit. There was only a trickle of power left in his body, and he was filled with exhaustion. This kind of intense battle was too intense, so intense that even a freak like Ling Han could not bear it. Ling Han! Ling Han! Ling Han! Below, everyone was shouting, looking at him as if they were worshipping a god. Was he a cripple? Many young people knelt down. Their lives had been saved by Ling Han. Back then, Ling Han had rampaged through the city, killed countless monsters, and also saved countless people. Some of them were even weeping bitter tears. Previously, they had mocked and ridiculed Ling Han in every possible way, yet Ling Han not only did not blame them, but instead repaid their hatred with kindness and saved them. This caused them to feel incredibly ashamed. Chapter 2779. The war was over. In this battle, the number of people killed in the Frenzy army reached 30 million, and about half of them died at the hands of Ling Han. Such a battle record was definitely enough for Ling Han to take first place on the overall ranking. This was something that had never happened in ancient times. He had killed so many quasi-heavenly venerables in a single battle, even though there were many Ninth Firmament immortal kings among them. As the news spread out, the 8 layers of space shook. Who would have thought that a cripple could create such a magnificent feat? Cripple? Cripple your sister. Everyone sighed with emotion. Ling Han was really good at acting. He could be called the act tough king. However, most people knew that only a few people could pull off such a feat that was over 10 million quasi-Empyreans. Under normal circumstances, they would probably be able to exhaust 3 steps to death. But here, their cultivation was suppressed. Let alone 3 steps, even 4 or 5 steps could be killed. Could a 7th-step heavenly venerate achieve such a feat? After this battle, Ling Han's limelight immediately soared. Not only did he return to the height of his peak battle with Wu Haoying, he even far surpassed it. After the war, the city's defenses were quickly rebuilt. Ling Han and the others had also returned to the city. As they didn't know when the frenzy army would return, everyone had to go up to the city wall to help with the repair work. Even in such a busy state, there was still an endless stream of people coming to visit Ling Han. Big Brother Ling, thank you for repaying evil with kindness and saving us. After those youths came over, they knelt in front of Ling Han, their faces full of guilt. This was the person who had ridiculed Ling Han before. He did not expect that his life would be saved by Ling Han. After learning of Ling Han's feat, he was naturally so excited that his scalp went numb. This was a true hero. Even if he was being slandered by others, he still persisted in the ideals in his heart. Brother Ling. Brother Ling. More and more people came over, and they all called Ling Han Big Brother. It didn't matter if they were younger or older than Ling Han. In their eyes, he was a shining god, worthy of their reverence and worship. This battle had established Ling Han's unique status. In a sense, he could even stand shoulder to shoulder with a seven-step Empyrean. Zhou Yan also came. He sighed and said, "Previously, when I became an Empyrean, I thought that I had finally surpassed you. Who would have thought that even though you are only a quasi-Empyrean, you would still be able to suppress me so completely? Sometimes I feel very indignant. Why is there a monster like you in this world who wants to suppress me? But now, I'm glad that there's a monster like you. Only then can this war end. It ends with our victory." Ling Han laughed heartily and patted Zhou Yan's shoulder. "We will win," he said confidently. "Yes." Zhou Yan also nodded. Ling Han did not participate in the construction of the city's defense. Everyone knew that he had consumed a lot of energy, so it was natural for him to have a good rest. Moreover, Ling Han's contributions were unprecedented. If their front line was breached, not only would they lose a large amount of territory on the first level, but under the chain reaction, the other 7 levels would also be affected. Thus, Ling Han's contribution was astonishingly great. Yet he did not care at all. Empty reputation was completely meaningless to him. What he wanted was an increase in strength. Ling Han began to cultivate in seclusion. Similarly, the Empress also did the same. In truth, after a fierce battle of life and death, for many people, it was a chance to increase their strength, or even break through to the next cultivation level. He planned to break through to the heavenly venerable tier. At first, he had felt that his foundation was not strong enough, but the previous battle had really squeezed out all of his potential and also allowed him to completely unleash his battle prowess, allowing him to completely understand his own condition. It's enough, he told himself. For Ling Han, breaking through to the heavenly venerable tier was as easy as turning over his hand, because his power originated from his body. What he needed to do was to unleash his cultivation. Boom! Every cell in his body was vibrating, releasing a frightening power. But this time, it was not circulating in his body to temper it. Instead, it began to accumulate in his meridians, strengthening his battle prowess. Ling Han gave a battle cry and shot into the skies. Wang, a special power surged over between heaven and earth, fusing with him, extremely vast. This was the unique power of the fiery frost dimension, and it made him fully feel the greatness of heaven and earth. If he were to resist this power now, Ling Han would instantly be crushed into slag, and he could not be more dead. Because this was the power of a super high-level dimension, and one would need at least a 6-step heavenly venerable to be able to resist it. Yet Ling Han was confident that when his cultivation level rose, the power drawn from the fiery frost dimension in his body would also be able to grow to such a level. Thinking about it carefully, this was very terrifying. Just a single wisp of power in his body could contend against the mighty power of an entire plane, so how many wisps of this kind of power did he have in his body? Each wisp could evolve and improve. This was where Ling Han's confidence came from. Yes, the 6 essential powers of the origin world were on a higher level than everything else, but there were too many dimensions. However, I naturally won't give up on the essential powers. On the contrary, with the integration of the 6 essential powers, The power of the dimension can flourish and grow. This is complementary. Ling Han drew the power of heaven and earth, and added with the power that surged out of his body, he punched out. Hong, heaven and earth rumbled, and a black hole was torn open in the horizon. One could faintly see countless tentacles waving. He hurriedly filled up the black hole. The void was a chaotic world. It could interfere with any plane through the void, but the prerequisite was that it had to light up a lamp for it. What Ling Han had done previously was the act of lighting a lamp, so he naturally had to stop immediately. Quang, lightning flashed between heaven and earth, blasting towards him. Heavenly venerables were envied by heaven and earth. Even if they were useless, heavenly tribulation would still descend. This represented a kind of attitude of heaven and earth. Ling Han stood solemnly, allowing heaven and earth to strike him. He looked inside his body, and in his mind, a broken symbol appeared. This symbol was somewhat similar to the words that had appeared when the divine demon sword had advanced, but there seemed to be some differences. Ling Han had no one to ask now, so he could only suppress it in his heart. He ignored the heavenly tribulation and continued his research there. This symbol had only appeared when he broke through to heavenly venerable tier, so it should be very meaningful. He tried to absorb the power of heaven and earth. Instantly, this symbol lit up, causing his speed of absorbing the power of heaven and earth to increase by a dozen times. It had the same effect as the symbol that had appeared on the divine demon sword. Ling Han used the previous symbols again, causing them to light up together. Instantly, his speed of absorbing the power of heaven and earth increased to 32 times. The more symbols, the faster the speed of absorbing the power of heaven and earth. After the heavenly tribulation disappeared, Ling Han immediately discovered that the power of heaven and earth had become incredibly weak, as if it was barely there. It could still be used for cultivation, but if he wanted to draw it out to fight an enemy, it would be completely impossible. This was the suppression caused by the collision of the two great dimensions. If he wanted to escape the suppression, he had to go to the second level. Ling Han was not in a hurry to go to the second level. He first went to find the Empress, and asked her if she had discovered a broken symbol when she broke through. However, the Empress shook her head and said no. Chapter 2780. Strange. Why didn't the Empress have it? Ling Han went to look for Zhou Yan. Broken symbols. Zhou Yan was first taken aback, and then he sucked in a breath of cold air. Brother Ling, you really defy the heavens. What do you mean? Ling Han was startled by his words. Do you know what is the most precious thing to an Empyrean? Zhou Yan asked instead of answering. What is it? Ling Han asked. Could it be these symbols? Zhou Yan nodded. The more Empyrean symbols you control, the faster your cultivation speed will be. Because these are actually bridges or channels to communicate with the energy of heaven and earth. The more channels you have, the greater your harvest will be. He was taken aback, and then he sucked in another breath. Brother Ling, you said these symbols? Could it be that you control other symbols besides this one? Ling Han did not hide it from him. I have an Empyrean treasure artifact, and it appeared when I achieved my Tao. You really have great luck. Zhou Yan sighed ruefully. Generally speaking, the Empyrean symbols that we can obtain are usually obtained from Empyrean treasure artifacts. But the symbols obtained through this method are all the same, because they are all devouring metal that has absorbed enough immortal metal to take the final step. Ling Han nodded. The devouring metal's path of advancement was all the same. It was just like in a sect, where all the disciples cultivated the same cultivation technique. Thus, since ancient times, there are a total of 7 Empyrean symbols. This is also what most Empyreans control. But there are monstrous Empyreans who, through the long process of cultivation, can explore even more Empyrean symbols, Zhou Yan said. But this requires at least a third step Empyrean to be able to do so. For someone like Brother Ling, the symbols will automatically appear as soon as you break through to the Empyrean realm. This is simply inconceivable. Zhou Yan was filled with envy. These Empyrean symbols that were comprehended by themselves were the most suitable for him, and had the greatest effect of increasing his cultivation. Moreover, The Empyrean symbols can also be used when facing an enemy. By condensing the energy of heaven and earth, the power that can be released is absolutely astonishing. Ling Han nodded. Why hadn't he been able to use those symbols to fight before? Well, that was because he wasn't an Empyrean and couldn't truly use the power of heaven and earth. Brother Ling, the importance of the heavenly venerable mark is incomparably huge. To any heavenly venerable mark, it is filled with temptation. So, you must definitely guard your own secret. Otherwise, even if you make a huge contribution to the Yuan world, there might still be people who have designs on you, Zhou Yan said solemnly. Ling Han was surprised. Can this celestial venerate symbol be extracted? Zhou Yan nodded. If I encounter a high-level heavenly venerate, I might be able to extract that heavenly venerate symbol if I refine you alive. Brother Zhou, don't tell me you're tempted too? Ling Han joked. Zhou Yan, however, nodded his head. I won't hide it from you. I'm really tempted, but I haven't lost my rationality to harm such a hero. Besides, I can't beat you. Ling Han laughed heartily. This fellow was actually quite interesting. Thank you, Brother Zhou. Zhou Yan nodded. Don't worry, I won't reveal your secret. I believe you. Ling Han returned to his residence and told the Empress about the heavenly venerate symbol. Why was it that everyone had condensed a great deal of power of the realm, but the Empress hadn't formed the heavenly venerate symbol when she broke through? There could be two reasons. The first is that you have not condensed enough power of the realm, and the second is that your battle prowess is not up to par, Ling Han speculated. Chapter 2782. Ling Han did not call the Empress. He just went out of the city alone with that person. This heavenly venerate was called Lai Guang. He was much younger than Ling Han and had reached the heavenly venerate level after cultivating for 100 billion years. There was a hint of arrogance in his words. After the two walked for a while, a large canyon appeared in front of them. According to the information I received, there are at least 100 monsters hidden here, Lai Guang said. He took the lead and entered the canyon. Ling Han also followed in, but he only felt his vision blur. Although the environment here was a bit gloomy, it was definitely not as oppressive as it was now. The sky seemed to be so low that he could reach out and touch it. Lai Guang had disappeared. What was this place? Ling Han knew that when two planes collided, it would produce extremely strange landforms and even folded spaces. For example, sometimes after walking through a cave on the second level, one would suddenly arrive at the fourth or fifth level. Was this the case here? Ling Han walked slowly. He did not dare to be careless. His current combat power should be able to match or even win against a third-step heavenly venerate, but he was no match for a fourth-step heavenly venerate. Therefore, it was better to be safe than sorry. But after walking for a long time, he did not find any danger. From the outside, this canyon was only so big. With his speed, he could walk through it in a few breaths. But now, he had been walking for at least an hour and still had not reached the end. He revealed a smile. Lai Guang was indeed not sincere. He simply sat down cross-legged. It did not matter what Lai Guang wanted to do. Anyway, he could cultivate anywhere, and this place was the same. 1 day, 10 days, a full 2 months passed. Suddenly, a voice sounded. Ling Han, do you want to come out? Ling Han opened his eyes. Lai Guang, you tricked me into coming here to ask me this question? Hee, we just think you are too ostentatious and want you to be quiet for a while. Another voice sounded. This was definitely not Lai Guang. Ling Han smiled. How did I hinder you? Humph, this second layer was originally the territory of our original boss. However, you stole our boss' limelight the moment you arrived. Thus, we hope that you will stay here for a period of time and calm down. Ling Han was astonished. How could he attract hatred like this? Wasn't he keeping a low profile on the second floor? Who did he steal the limelight from? However, when he thought about it again, he didn't need to show off in the second level because he had already made great contributions in the first level. No matter which level he went to, he would become an influential figure. It was normal for him to steal the limelight. However, to be able to stand out in the second level, he should also be an incomparably outstanding figure. How could he not even have this bit of magnanimity? Was such a move done by these people in private, or was it arranged by the original boss? Do you really think that this can trap me? Laughed Ling Han. This is a mystic realm formed from the collision of planes. Now that we've affected the power of heaven and earth, you won't be able to break out without at least 100 million years, someone said with incomparable confidence. Ling Han's eyes lit up. After looking around, he nodded. The other party was right. The structure of heaven and earth here was constantly changing, and it was extremely difficult to sort out the patterns within. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he would be trapped for 100 million years. However, what these people didn't know was that his strength far surpassed this level. In that case, there was no need for him to follow the rules. He could directly use his strength to break through. This was where his confidence came from, so he hadn't used his full strength yet. Ling Han smiled calmly. Then I'll break it for you. He strode forward. Boom, every single cell in his body was surging with power, transforming into a vast river. The power of existential plane surged and surged out of his body endlessly, forming a ring of light around him. Crack, crack, crack. The space around him continuously shattered, as if he was shattering a crystal. Outside the valley, a total of 7 men and women stood there, all of them smiling coldly. They couldn't get used to Ling Han. He was just a newcomer who had just ascended from the first level, but he had actually caused such a huge commotion, affecting even their boss's prestige. Yet he had been easily tricked into their trap. This, someone suddenly said, trembling. He pointed at the valley, his face full of disbelief. What are you panicking for? The others reprimanded. When they looked at the valley, they were similarly dumbfounded. This was because Ling Han walked forward as if he was walking on flat ground. He wasn't affected in the slightest. How was this possible? Ling Han smiled. When one's strength reaches a certain level, they can break through all falsehoods. Nonsense, they also knew this. But the key was that the power here was suppressed. Even a 6th-step heavenly venerable would be affected. What right did he have to break through with his strength? Ling Han looked at these 7 youths and said, with the great threat of frenzy in front of you, you're actually still thinking of these little tricks. You're so narrow-minded. I really don't know how you cultivated to become heavenly venerables. The 7 of them were ashamed and angry. They were all at the same level. What right did he have to reprimand them? It was as if he was their elder. Ling Han, don't be too arrogant. Lai Guang immediately shouted. Ling Han looked at him. Do you think that there's something wrong with my IQ for me to trust you so easily? He shook his head. I said that you're narrow-minded. In the face of such a big picture, I'm more willing to trust people a little more. But you've abused my trust. Today, I'll definitely teach you a good lesson. Lai Guang's group of 7 sneered. You're just a first-step heavenly venerable. 1 against 7, do you have any chance of winning? Ling Han did not answer. He just walked forward with large strides. How dare you? The 7 of them roared angrily and pounced at Ling Han. When they rushed in front of Ling Han, their expressions changed drastically. They only felt a terrifying suction force acting on their bodies, causing their figures to accelerate. They wanted to stop, but to their horror, they found that it was impossible to do so. They instantly crashed into each other. So what if they were heavenly venerables? They still ended up in a sorry state. They crawled to their feet, and when they looked at Ling Han again, their eyes were filled with intense fear. This person had made them suffer so much without even using a single move. Just how powerful was he? Let's go, they all said. They were simply no match for Ling Han. They had to ask their original boss to come out and fight him. I said that I'd teach you a lesson. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Ling Han stretched out his hand. Boom! A terrifying pressure descended. This was the power of a 3rd-step heavenly venerable. Even if the 7 of them joined forces, they would not be able to resist it. They were instantly suppressed. Ah! The 7 of them cried out miserably as they all fell to the ground. They were simply unable to resist Ling Han's pressure. Today, I'll teach you some principles. Ling Han calmly said. He sat cross-legged to the side, but the pressure was still there. The 7 young heavenly venerables were sweating profusely. Comrades are not meant to be tricked. Trust is not meant to be squandered. After saying that, Ling Han pressed his hand down, causing the 7 of them to suffer. Even if they resisted with all their strength, it was useless. They only felt as if all the bones in their bodies were about to break. Chapter 2783. After Ling Han lectured these 7 people, he swaggered off. He couldn't be bothered to waste any more time. If these 7 people turned over a new leaf from now on, that would naturally be the best. However, if they still refused to give up and still wanted to make trouble for him, then he would kill them without hesitation. He returned to the stronghold and continued to cultivate. There were a total of 8 heavenly venerable tear symbols in his body, and as they circulated, they helped him communicate with heaven and earth, drawing a large amount of intrinsic power to increase his cultivation level. Ling Han had a kind of realization. He should never be able to cultivate the first step of the heavenly venerable tier to the pinnacle. This was because there was no end to it. Every cell in his body was a plane that could endlessly strengthen. There was no end to it. Or rather, the limit was the ultimate power of a dimension, so how many years would it take to reach that level? If I want to, I should be able to reach the second step at any time, Ling Han thought. His present state was very strange. He had clearly been able to draw on virtual energy long ago, and added with the current power of the dimension, he could actually be considered a second step heavenly venerable tier. However, I feel that I haven't reached the level of great success in this step. Many dimensions are very weak and need a very long time to nurture. Otherwise, when virtual energy enters my body, these cells might not be able to bear it and shatter, and that would be a loss. So I have to do it step by step. Ling Han suppressed his patience. His current cultivation mainly depended on himself. The power of the dimension in his body was self-contained, and no one could help him. Several days later, he suddenly received a letter of challenge. The letter of challenge was sent by someone called Yuan Yinglong, inviting him to battle at the 4 Seas Mountain outside the city 3 days later. This should be Boss Yuan, right? Ling Han shook his head. He hadn't thought that these 7 people still hadn't learned their lesson. If they wanted to fight, so be it. Ling Han accepted the letter of challenge. In the space of the 2nd or even the 3rd level, he didn't think that he would have any opponents. Of course, there might be people as freakish as him, possessing the ability to match those of the 2nd or even the 3rd step at the 1st step. 3 steps was impossible. Ling Han was filled with confidence in himself. He had spent so much time, failed several times, and was on the verge of death to finally obtain his current achievements. He didn't believe that this could be replicated. 3 days later, he arrived at the 4 Seas Mountain accompanied by the Empress and the others. Ling Han, come up the mountain and fight. A clear voice rang out from the top of the mountain. Ling Han nodded at the Empress and the others. With a single step, he had already arrived at the summit of the mountain. They saw a young man standing on the mountain. He was tall and his black hair fluttered in the wind. His expression was resolute, and there was an indescribable divine splendor around him. I apologize to you on behalf of my worthless brothers and sisters, the man said as he bowed to Ling Han. This surprised Ling Han. He nodded and said, I've already taught them a lesson. However, as their boss, it's impossible for me to remain indifferent when they're being bullied, so I still have to ask Brother Ling for some advice. Yuan Yinglong said as he clenched his fists. If you can't block my fists, then you can only take a beating. Ling Han laughed. Come on then. Yuan Yinglong gave a light shout. Peng, his feet exerted force, and he charged towards Ling Han. He shot out a punch, drawing upon the unique power of heaven and earth. Added with his own power, it formed the most powerful attack in the Yuan world. Even divine metal would only be shattered into pieces. Ling Han punched out in response. Peng, peng, peng. The two of them fiercely clashed. You are indeed extraordinary, Yuan Yinglong said loudly. His voice rumbled and contained his strong confidence. But I'm stronger. He waved his hands even more quickly. Ling Han casually parried. This Yuan Yinglong was indeed very strong, and his battle prowess definitely surpassed ordinary cultivators by a level. However, compared to him, he was completely lacking. If he wanted to, he could explode the other party with a single punch. However, he felt that Yuan Yinglong was not a bad person. He knew to apologize first, and then stand up for his underlings. This made him feel a bit better. After throwing out a few hundred punches, Yuan Yinglong saw that he could not defeat Ling Han. He decisively took out his Celestial Venerable Treasure and activated his Celestial Venerable Treasure technique. A dazzling saber light slashed out. Using the Celestial Venerable Treasure technique, the power was naturally great. Ling Han also increased his power a bit, but was still evenly matched with his opponent. Yuan Yinglong's expression instantly changed. Previously, they were evenly matched. He thought that Ling Han's power was about the same as his, but he used his Celestial Venerable Treasure tool and activated it with his Celestial Venerable Treasure technique. How many times did his battle prowess increase? But Ling Han did not use a weapon or a Venerable Treasure technique, and still did not fall into a disadvantage. Then, if his opponent went all out, how strong would he be? He knew that he had already lost, but he was unwilling to not even know how strong Ling Han was. Thus, he gave a loud roar, and several symbols appeared on his chest. These were Celestial Venerable symbols. Although they were very vague, Ling Han still recognized them, because these were the Celestial Venerable symbols that he had grasped from the beginning, and came from the Divine Demon Sword. These were also the 7 Celestial Venerable symbols that had been passed down the world. Because as long as the Devouring Metal took the final step, they would all appear, and it was not difficult for a Celestial Venerable to obtain them. Celestial Venerable symbols, Celestial Venerable Treasure tool, Celestial Venerable Treasure technique, these 3 combined might probably be able to match a second-step cultivator. However, such an attack came at him, and Ling Han still calmly dealt with it, not panicking, not showing the slightest bit of strain. I've lost. Yuan Yinglong voluntarily stopped, a complicated expression on his face. He was a prodigy-level character, and if placed in his own realm, he would definitely be the greatest prodigy throughout the ages. But here, though he could also stand out, he could not live up to the title of strongest. Ling Han nodded, waved at him, and turned to leave. Wait. Yuan Yinglong took a step after him. Ling Han turned back, revealing a smile. What, you still want to fight? Yuan Yinglong hurriedly shook his head. No, I want to invite Brother Ling to a place. Ling Han showed a strange expression, and only looked at the other without speaking. Yuan Yinglong was dazed at first, and then reacted. Don't worry, this is definitely not to trick Brother Ling to go out with ulterior motives. After a pause, he continued, I want to invite Brother Ling to a secret realm. Ling Han was a little surprised. He was already a celestial master, so why would he still want to go to a secret realm? Was there a treasure in this world that could speed up a celestial master's progress? There wasn't. Celestial masters were the envy of heaven and earth, so how could heaven and earth produce a treasure that could help a celestial master improve? Celestial master symbol, Yuan Yinglong said seriously. Ling Han was even more confused. Celestial master symbols could only be cultivated by oneself, right? There are 2 ways to create a celestial master symbol. One is to comprehend heaven and earth, and form it with great wisdom. The second is in a special environment, Yuan Yinglong explained. This special environment is very difficult to achieve. First, it needs to not be controlled by heaven and earth. Ling Han nodded. Celestial masters were the envy of heaven and earth, and this fact could not be changed even in a super high-level realm. This is the place where the 2 realms meet. It is not controlled by the Frenzy realm, nor is it controlled by the Fire Frost realm, so the first condition is met, Yuan Yinglong said. Chapter 2784. Ling Han nodded and said, What about the second one? Yuan Yinglong did not answer directly. Instead, he told a story. A few eras ago, there was an earth-shattering battle. At that time, the 4th level and this level suddenly became chaotic. As a result, a large number of third-step frenzy army appeared here. During that period, the second level's planar power was extremely unstable. Sometimes it could accommodate third-step forces, and sometimes it couldn't. At that time, our camp was much farther away than this level. It was quickly breached by the Frenzy Army, and they were routed for thousands of miles. Later, with the help of the fourth level's reinforcements, we finally stabilized our footing and fought a decisive battle with the Frenzy Army in one place. Too many people died in that battle, Yi Futian said. And just as the battle was about to end, there was a sudden change in the space. As a result, the entire battlefield disappeared, and the survivors all escaped. The pressure of the two planes was like a millstone, and even a third-step heavenly venerable would be easily crushed to death. After so many years, this space has actually appeared again. It hasn't fully manifested yet, but according to the calculations of the Almighty, with so many third-step heavenly venerables dying together and going through so many years of integration, it is very likely that a heavenly venerable symbol will appear. After Yuan Yinglong finished speaking, he stared at Ling Han. Brother Ling, I would like to invite you to that mystic realm to search for the heavenly venerable symbol. The heavenly venerable symbol was too important. It could greatly increase one's cultivation speed. People like Lin Yu Lian, Wu Haoyang, and the others must have grasped a large number of heavenly venerable symbols. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to rush to the fourth step in a short period of 1 billion years. Ling Han pondered for a moment and said, "Okay, let's go." Yuan Yinglong was overjoyed. In fact, he only had a small reputation in the second level, and his battle achievements had barely squeezed into the current ranking list. He was ranked in the 900s. If he returned to his own plane, no one would be able to compare to him. But here, there were a lot of people stronger than him. Obtaining the heavenly venerable symbol could increase his battle strength and cultivation speed, but there were many people eyeing that place. He might not be able to laugh in the end. With Ling Han's help, his chances of success would naturally increase. Ling Han looked at Yuan Yinglong with a smile on his face. This fellow was quite thoughtful. If he could win, he would naturally disdain to invite Ling Han. At the same time, he could help his underlings vent their anger and establish his prestige as the boss. If he lost, he would have obtained a strong ally. It was no wonder that this fellow had behaved so gracefully from the beginning. It turned out that he had already prepared 2 cards in advance. Yuan Yinglong also laughed, but it was a little awkward. He knew that Ling Han had seen through his thoughts. Ling Han waved his hand and left. He came to the foot of the mountain and went back with the others. He also told them about the arcane realm. Very dangerous, bewitching Maiden Ro immediately said. Who knows if another spatial overlap will appear, and a large number of third-step frenzied army will appear. The queen also nodded. She knew that Ling Han's strength was enough to match a 3-step cultivator, but he could deal with 1 or even 10 of them. However, if Madness sent out a large army to attack, would there only be a mere dozen or 20? Thus, if another spatial overlap appeared, that would be an extremely dangerous matter. Ling Han naturally knew this as well. This opportunity cannot be missed. 1 heavenly venerable symbol, and our cultivation speed will be several times slower. After advancing into heavenly venerable tier, even the time physique could not be used, and regulations could not be used on heavenly venerables. Thus, starting from heavenly venerable tier, it was actually truly starting from 0. No one had any advantage, and it was only individual effort and opportunity. Seeing that Ling Han had already made his decision, the queen and bewitching Maiden Ro did not object. Furthermore, since many heavenly venerables have died there must be heavenly venerable tier treasures. I'll go pick a few for you to use, Ling Han continued. The arcane realm might have heavenly venerable symbols, but that was only the speculation of others, but he believed that there should be many heavenly venerable tier treasures. Even if they were broken, it was fine. In any case, they were all forged from devouring metal, and could be pieced together to form a new one. Ling Han also informed the Rain Emperor, heavenly venerable born fate, and the others about whether they wanted to go or not. A dozen or so days later, Yuan Yinglong came to summon them, and they were ready to set off. Thus, Ling Han also set off with his people. Aside from him and the queen, there was also Ling Jianshui, Heavenly Venerable Born Fate, Eat the Rain Emperor, the Large Black Dog, and the Black Donkey. What kind of eyes do you little brats have? Can't I go? The Black Donkey saw that everyone was looking at him strangely, and couldn't help but snort. Senior is following Lord Zhouheng. Could it be that you still lack heavenly venerable symbols? Ling Han asked with a smile. Though he was also in the first step, and his battle prowess far surpassed the Black Donkey's, he was a sentimental person and still maintained his respect for the Black Donkey. The Black Donkey sighed. Do you all know how the heavenly venerable symbol should be passed on? It is directly extracted from one's mind, and one will lose this symbol forever. In other words, it can only be passed on, and cannot be passed on. That brat Zhouheng extracted 3 heavenly venerable symbols for me, but what kind of donkey am I? Do I have the nerve to take advantage of that brat? Everyone was speechless. Even the large black dog raised his head and began to whistle. The large black dog and the black donkey were both black-hearted fellows to the bone, and they actually dared to say that they didn't like to take advantage of others. Their skin was really thicker than the city walls. The black donkey was not afraid of letting others know that he had 3 heavenly venerable symbols. These were given to him by Zhouheng, so who would dare to take them from him? A 6th step heavenly venerable could even resist the stacked pressure of 2 planes, and he could completely kill his way from the 1st level to the 7th level without weakening his battle prowess in the slightest. Who would dare to provoke such a supreme being? Chapter 2786. Lu Shishuang was very displeased. I, Lu Shishuang, have no reason to lower my head to anyone. Oh, even if you couldn't be more wrong, Ling Han said indifferently. Of course, Lu Shishuang said proudly. You can only blame it on your bad luck. It was no wonder he spoiled those 2. The 2 9th Firmament Immortal Kings were very pleased. They had been with this cousin since they were young and had invested a lot in him. Therefore, Lu Shishuang protected them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have reached the 9th firmament so quickly. Because of this, they followed him despite the dangers of the outer realm battlefield. They believed that Lu Shishuang would definitely protect them and allow them to continue living shamelessly. They were also people with goals. They felt that there was no joy or sense of accomplishment in bullying ordinary people. Otherwise, 9th Firmament Immortal Kings could be proud and carefree wherever they went. Ling Han shook his head. Come, there are more than 2 people who need to be taught a lesson. How dare you? Lu Shishuang's subordinates all scolded him. In their hearts, Lu Shishuang was not someone who could be blasphemed against. In battle after battle, Lu Shishuang had saved their lives countless times. They were moved and grateful, and they were willing to follow him and become his subordinate. Lu Shishuang smiled. Ling Han, I heard that you once created a miracle on the 1st level. However, this is not the 1st level. There are many people stronger than you. You are nothing. Oh, you mean you are stronger than me? Ling Han asked. Of course, Lu Shishuang said proudly. I don't believe it. Ling Han walked over and reached out to grab Lu Shishuang. You overestimate yourself. Lu Shishuang snorted and grabbed Ling Han's wrist. Bam! The 2 clashed. Lu Shishuang's expression changed. His 5 fingers felt like they had hit an iron plate. They bounced back, and every finger bone felt like they were about to break. It was indescribably uncomfortable. But what shocked him even more was the fact that Ling Han's hand had reached straight in, grabbing at his neck. You've gone too far. Lu Shishuang roared angrily. He could accept being defeated, but being grabbed by the neck was a great humiliation. It would be a stain on his life, and it was something he could not tolerate. His chest glowed and turned into a blurry symbol. In such a short period of time, it was already too late for him to activate the Empyrean Precious technique, but activating the Empyrean symbol was something that could be done with a single thought. Boom! Rays of light shot out from his chest and poured toward Ling Han. Ling Han lightly knocked on the light with the back of his hand, and the light immediately shattered. He seemed to be unaffected as he continued to grab at Lu Shishuang. Lu Shishuang's expression finally changed. He didn't expect that he wouldn't be able to stop Ling Han even after activating the Celestial Venerate symbol. However, he had used up all his tricks. He could only watch as Ling Han grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. Everyone's jaws dropped, unable to utter a single word. Lu Shishuang was someone who was currently ranked in the top 300, but he had been easily taken down by Ling Han with a single slap. It was as easy as an eagle catching a chick. He couldn't resist at all. Ling Han, you've gone too far. Lu Shishuang roared. He was unwilling to be humiliated like this. He had already activated his Empyrean treasure. He was going to fight to the death. Too far, your sister. Ling Han shook his right hand, and the bones in Lu Shishuang's body instantly collided with each other. They all shattered. He instantly lost his ability to fight and fainted. And the Empyrean treasure, having lost its owner's will, also dimmed. It fell to the ground. In the second level, basically everyone was a newly advanced Empyrean, and it wasn't possible for everyone to have an Empyrean treasure. Although the Flames Now plane was a super high-level world, it couldn't possibly have so much devouring metal. Since the veteran Empyreans had come from their own plane, they definitely had Empyrean treasure. However, the number of newly advanced Empyreans was pitifully small. Ling Han casually tossed Lu Shishuang to the side. Then, he turned towards the 2 9th-level Celestial Kings, his gaze cold. This was a battlefield where brave warriors resisted a frenzied army, not a playground for hedonistic young masters. The existence of such people was simply a humiliation to those heroes who had died. The 2 9th-level Celestial Kings couldn't help but tremble in fear. This result was too unexpected. In the past, no matter what kind of trouble they caused, Lu Shishuang would always settle it for them. Furthermore, they weren't idiots. They definitely wouldn't provoke someone in the top 500 or someone related to them. Thus, they had always had a smooth journey. Unexpectedly, they had kicked a steel plate today. What do you want to do? The two of them said in a trembling voice. They couldn't help but be afraid. Ling Han waved his hand. He slapped them across the face, and the two of them fell to the ground at the same time. Their jaws had been slapped off, and blood sprayed everywhere. It was a tragic sight. The two of them screamed. They had never suffered like this since they were young. When Fang Hongdian and the others saw this, they secretly rejoiced in their hearts. They had wanted to beat these two up for a long time, but because of Lu Shishuang, this could only become a beautiful fantasy. Now, Ling Han had made this dream come true for them. Unfortunately, Ling Han had also knocked Lu Shishuang unconscious. This made them feel very conflicted. They didn't know how to face Ling Han. After Ling Han slapped the 2 9th-level Celestial Kings, he directly destroyed their immortal seeds, turning them into cripples. It was already good enough that trash like them hadn't taken their lives. No! The two of them were very clear-headed. When they realized that they had become cripples, they cried bitterly. Without their cultivation, how could they resist the immortals' tribulation? They would definitely be killed by the heavens. Ling Han ignored them and returned to Yuan Yinglong and the other's side. At this time, Yuan Yinglong and his lackeys looked at Ling Han even more differently. It was as if they weren't looking at a celestial venerable of the same level, but an expert of at least the 3rd level. Let's go! They danced and flew against the black waterfall, flying towards the sky. This waterfall was too long. They flew and flew for a full 3 days, but there was no sign of an end. After flying for another 5 days, they finally reached the end of the waterfall. There was a huge hole in the mountain here, and endless black water gushed out from it. It seemed to be connected to a great world, and one could see pieces of broken continents flowing out from it. On each side of the waterfall was a huge boulder. Many people stood on it, all of them imposing, exuding boundless domineering auras. Most of them were celestial venerables. Ling Han and the others also descended and stood on the boulder. Yuan Yinglong's gaze swept across, and he couldn't help but gasp. I really didn't expect this mystic realm to not only attract so many geniuses on the current rankings, but also the experts of the 3rd and 4th levels. Over there. He pointed with his mouth. The one wearing the red robe is the famous Shi Zhanghe of the 4th floor. He's known as the 9 Swords Demon Sovereign. His swordsmanship is amazing, and he can kill any opponent within 9 moves. And over there, the one in the green dress. Yuan Yinglong added, Shi Mingyu is also a genius of the 4th level. I think she's on the current rankings, and her title is Celestial Venerable Jade Flame. Hiss, there are too many experts this time. Chapter 2787. They thought that this was just a contest between the powerhouses of the 2nd level, but they didn't expect that it would attract the powerhouses of the 3rd and 4th levels. We underestimated the attractiveness of the Celestial Master symbol. Yuan Yinglong sighed. Indeed, even the geniuses of the 3rd and 4th levels had come. For the warriors of the 2nd level, they were all big shots. However, this is the 2nd level, and there is the suppression of the power of heaven and earth. Let alone them, even the big shots of the 6th level would be suppressed, he said. Everyone nodded. Even a 5th step celestial master wouldn't have an advantage if they fought here. Ling Han looked around. Is there some kind of power suppression here? So many people aren't going in. Yuan Yinglong asked the people next to him and soon got the answer. It turned out that there was a huge pressure at the entrance of the cave. The deeper one went in, the greater the pressure. It was not something that a 1st step celestial master could contend with. Going in by force would be courting death. Therefore, everyone was waiting. Since this secret realm had appeared, it meant that the environment was changing. They would definitely be able to enter. Yuan Yinglong had been here for a long time and had been to the 3rd, 4th, and even 5th levels. Therefore, he knew most of the people here and introduced them to everyone one by one. This time, at least half of the top 100 people on the ranking list of the 2nd level had come. The highest ranked person was Geng Xiandan, who was ranked 7th. He had stayed on the 2nd level for more than 70,000 billion years and had honed his cultivation to the extreme. In terms of combat power, he could compete for the strongest. There were also powerful people on the 3rd and 4th levels. Even if their cultivation was suppressed here, their strength could not be underestimated. Ling Han was not afraid. Even if his cultivation was not suppressed here, he would not be afraid of a 3rd step celestial master, let alone now. I'll go check out the situation. He strode toward the source of the waterfall. It was a huge cave in the belly of the mountain. Even pieces of broken continents could flow out of it without any difficulty. It was obvious how huge it was. Seeing Ling Han fly in, many people sneered. They felt that Ling Han was overestimating himself. So many powerhouses had tried, but he still didn't give up. Showing off, who is this person? He thinks too highly of himself. Oh, you look down on him. What? Is he an influential figure? Ling Han, have you heard of him? Could it be that Ling Han from the 1st floor? That's right. He has already stepped into the heavenly venerable realm and is on the 2nd level. So it's him. However, so what if it's him? That place can even crush a 2nd step heavenly venerate. Our cultivation bases are suppressed, so even a 3rd step heavenly venerate can only sit and wait for the suppression to disappear. Hee, young people are full of vigor. They definitely want to do what others can't. Do you really think you are on par with Wu Haoyang? Many people shook their heads. Ling Han had already fallen behind in the competition for the top geniuses. Now, Lin Yu Lian, Wu Haoyang, and Exin Chihu were all 4th step Empyreans, but Ling Han had only just taken 1 step. How could he compete? Ling Han flew above the waterfall. After entering the mountain, the waterfall had also turned into a river. It was even wider than the ocean, stretching as far as the eye could see. Even with the eyesight of an Empyrean, he could only barely see the mountain walls on both sides. After traveling for a while, he felt a massive pressure coming at him, preventing him from moving forward. This kind of power had reached the limit of the 1st step. Most 1st step Empyreans could only watch helplessly, unable to move forward. Moreover, he had a feeling that this rune was covered up, and only 1/3 of it was revealed. Heavenly Venerate Rune Ling Han was sure that even though it was an extremely blurry image, it was reflected in his spiritual sea, and he felt that the speed at which he could communicate with heaven and earth energy had increased. True enough, There really was a heavenly venerable tier rune here. Ling Han hesitated. Should he bring the Empress and the others here? He immediately shook his head. The pressure here was too great. No matter what, one would need the strength of third step to be able to resist it. Even if he brought them here, so what? He observed the heavenly venerable tier rune here, wanting to grasp it. Unfortunately, not only was this rune blurry, it also disappeared very quickly. Ling Han sat here for half a year, and he had also come to a conclusion. Only when the lake had a tide would this rune appear, and it would last for about an hour or so. But when the tide would appear was completely unpredictable. Sometimes it would be one day, and sometimes it would be a dozen or so days, and it would be calm and peaceful. Another half a year later, Ling Han decided to go out first. This was because he had already more or less grasped this rune. Unless he could go deep into the bottom of the lake, this was all he could do here. Chapter 2788. Ling Han went back the way he came. A few days later, he followed the river and appeared at the entrance of the mountain. Seeing Ling Han come out, there was naturally a considerable number of people discussing spiritedly. He couldn't resist it and escaped. But he persisted in there for more than a year. That's not easy. Hey, do you really believe that he entered the depths of the space? I said he must have stayed in the outer area for more than a year, but people thought he had been going deeper to shock us. That's too shameless. No one believed that Ling Han could reach the source of the waterfall. It was too unrealistic. Even a third-step celestial venerable could not do it. Ling Han did not take it seriously at all. He came in front of Lu Shishuang and the others. How is it? The Rain Emperor asked. Ling Han briefly explained the situation, which made everyone's hearts itch. They also wanted to go to that symbol. Unfortunately, the terrifying pressure had not disappeared. If they went in now, it was tantamount to suicide. Yuan Yinglong was not as confident in Ling Han as the others were. In his opinion, it was impossible to go in without being a third-step celestial venerable. Moreover, one had to be a third-step celestial venerable. Therefore, even if Ling Han was a third-step celestial venerable, he could not do it. He must be talking nonsense. He shook his head secretly. Ling Han only said that to attract attention. The reason he dared to say that was because no one could go in. Alas, the pressure here would dissipate sooner or later. When that time came, everyone would find out that Ling Han was talking nonsense. Why bother? Yuan Yinglong did not say it out loud. After all, Ling Han was much stronger than him. He had to give him face. Everyone waited. There was nothing they could do now. More and more people came. There were third step, second step, and first step celestial venerables and level 9 attendants. It was very lively. No conflict broke out. They all sat quietly. Now, there was no conflict of interest. But if the pressure here was gone and they could enter the secret realm, the situation would be different. Everyone was very patient. In any case, they could also cultivate here, but the efficiency would be slightly lower. Ling Han had already used the new symbol. He discovered that his efficiency of communicating with the heavens and the earth had increased a little, but it had only increased from 32 times to 34 times. It seemed like the increase was not much, but one must know that this was only a vague symbol. If he could obtain the complete one, the effect of the upgrade would be even more obvious. Ling Han then tried to fuse his heavenly venerable tier symbols into battle. He discovered that every heavenly venerable tier symbol needed to be charged before it could be used, and then it would light up. In the process of using it, it would be releasing energy. When the Empyrean symbol completely dimmed, it could no longer be used. It had to be recharged. The Empyrean symbol could be used together with the Empyrean Paragon technique, increasing its power. Unfortunately, the celestial sovereign runes couldn't be activated together. Even if they were activated together, their power wouldn't increase. All they could do was speed up the energy release process. However, even so, the more Empyrean runes one mastered, the more obvious the increase in battle prowess would be. Because the energy release process only took 2 hours, the more Empyrean runes one mastered, the higher one's battle prowess could be maintained. Moreover, different Empyrean runes had different increases in battle prowess. Ling Han had tested it before. Among the 8 runes in his body, the 7 runes he had obtained from the divine demon sword could only increase his battle prowess by about 10 times, but the incomplete rune could increase it by 12 times. And this was even in its incomplete state. What if it was complete? Ling Han couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. He definitely had to complete this rune. As time passed, everyone discovered that the pressure here was slowly dissipating. Going by this trend, in less than a year, the pressure here will completely disappear, someone speculated. Sure enough, after half a year, someone took the risk to enter, and discovered that compared to before, the distance they could enter had greatly increased. Everyone scrambled to enter, fearing that the pressure would suddenly disappear and someone would snatch the opportunity. They followed the river, flying all the way. Yuan Yinglong discovered to his surprise that the situation here was just as Ling Han had said. Could it be that what Ling Han had said before was true? No. He immediately shook his head. Ling Han's strength was very strong, and perhaps he had indeed come here, so naturally he could sketch out the situation. But if they continued forward, Ling Han's lies would definitely be exposed. After walking about 2/3 of the way, they stopped. The pressure ahead was still there. Another half a year later, they advanced again, and then encountered the pressure again and stopped again. After walking and stopping like this for about 3 years, the Great Lake was finally in sight. We've reached the source. Everyone was excited. Yuan Yinglong and his underlings were so shocked that their scalps went numb. Because everything was just as Ling Han had said, it seemed as if he had really come here. Was it possible? The pressure here had been so terrifying, but Ling Han had been able to walk like it was flat ground. This was really a first-step heavenly venerable, and definitely not a 6-step heavenly venerable in disguise. They couldn't help but look at Ling Han with awe. They had originally thought that Ling Han was stronger than them, but they had no idea how strong he was. But now they knew that this was a height that they could only look up to. A few days later, the lake's surface surged, setting off a terrifying wave that made everyone suck in a breath of cold air. If they were hit by this wave, even a 3rd-step heavenly venerable would be shaken into minced meat. But after the wave passed, the lake's surface glowed with golden light, turning into a broken and incomplete symbol, which excited everyone. Heavenly venerable symbol. They couldn't wait. As long as the pressure here was gone, they would dive to the bottom of the lake, find that heavenly venerable symbol, and obtain this great fortune for themselves. Although it was impossible for them to see everything clearly from such a distance, they would still be able to comprehend some of its mysteries. Thus, everyone was observing. As long as they could grasp even a little bit of it, their combat strength and cultivation speed would increase by a little bit. Ling Han stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He had long since learned this incomplete and blurry heavenly venerable symbol, and because of the distance, the symbol he had learned was slightly more complete. He stood guard for the Empress and the others, lest someone disturb them while they were comprehending. Every few days, the pressure here would decrease a little, and everyone would be able to advance a step. They were getting closer and closer to the lake, and could see that heavenly venerable symbol more and more clearly. Finally, after another 3 months, the pressure here completely disappeared. Everyone was overjoyed, and some immediately jumped into the lake, diving to the bottom to find the heavenly venerable symbol. Once this symbol was truly born, the time it could exist was very limited, and it would quickly disappear. Thus, if they wanted to obtain it, they had to be quick. At least, they couldn't fall behind others. In just a short while, those who had dived into the lake's bottom emerged one after another, all covered in blood, looking extremely disheveled. The pressure in this lake hadn't disappeared, and they couldn't dive very deep at all, so they could only return. This was the only place that could make a heavenly venerable so disheveled. They are tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.